Most notably, though, Farsight makes the Book of the Beast, which is very sus by Tau standards, because you're not allowed to write if you're in the Firecast, or play with Lego, or
read.
Or read.
You're all illiterate, you have guns.
When Envoy catches the baby Firecast playing with Mega Blocks, he's sending the drones your way.
Oh my god.
Go over.
Is this literally the meme of like, back when you were all reading, I was studying the blade?
Yeah. And so Farsight starts getting allegations of being Vashtia, because if you do something else outside of your cast, they don't like it.
Imagine like in a high school, you got like the Earth cast and like some Mechanicus studying for some test, and then Farsight comes and pushes them in the lockers. You doing nerds reading?
Dunks their head in the toilet and you see the air bubbles coming out of their weird nose. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Lorecrimes. Today on the Beginner to the Expert podcast, we are discussing something a little bit different than usual. We talk a lot about humanity and the Space Marines and all the other fun things that, everyone loves about Warhammer, but occasionally we have to talk about, the stuff that is a bit more, niche. We got to cater to the weebs occasionally.
The weebs? No.
It is the non-weeb tale either, right?
and today we are talking about the Farsight Enclave. So we're talking about some dirty Xenos.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
But first. Okay, everyone. So what was the question last time? And it was the hashtag lore lies, where you had to tell us some obscure lies about what was going on in the 40k universe. We've had some pretty good...
Spicy.
I had a look through... This is the thing. It's always a joy to look through just all the responses and then try and pick some of the ones that we particularly enjoyed. I've picked out a few very different ones of varying types of comedic prowess, shall we say. So I'll start off with a very short and sweet but strong one from Irish Wristwatch. Hashtag Lorelies, the Emperor's original crusade against AI saw him named the Secunda Bomber. I think that one was quite good.
What was his name? That's I need to sit down for a moment there.
The Secunda Bomber. Famed criminal Tadeusz Kaczynskis.
The thing is, Eli mentioned him in a past episode briefly, and I was like, yeah, that reminded me of Eli's comment.
Oh my god.
Good work, Irish wristwatch.
Abominable intelligence has been a disaster for the human race.
That's right. That's right.
Its consequences.
We ready for another one?
Hit us.
Let it rip.
This one's a bit more fun. It's a bit less harsh, but it's also fun. It's from Late22, and he said, "Worst kept secret of the Imperium is that all the Space Wolves are secretly multiple corgis stacked on top of each other in a power suit." Suit of power armor. I know Colin hates the Space Wolves, so that's why I mentioned that one.
See, that's good, but I have to disagree because corgis are the best dog on the planet, and the Space Wolves are awful.
Really?
Bruh.
Corgis are awesome.
This is written by a British
I like
person.
all dogs, but corgis are amazing.
This is 100% written by a British person, because they know it was the Queen who stacked all the corgis in the suit.
Well, you know what, mystery British person, you and your corgis rock on. Corgis are awesome.
Oh my god.
I had a fat corgi named Rocky. He was the dumbest creature on the planet. He was also the fattest dog ever. He would get excited and run, but when he would try and turn a corner, he couldn't stop because he was so fat and dumb. So he'd just plow into the wall.
So you're basically saying he was a fluffy marshmallow with legs. Or something like that.
I think he was more like a red loaf, because when he would where he lays down, his legs would just disappear. So he just looked like a red loaf with a head.
Oh my
Just
god.
recede into his body.
I love that dog.
Was he like not very stealthy? Like you could hear him breathing from a mile away.
I mean, yeah. Whenever he moved, he would just. And we took him on walks. Like we didn't just overfeed him. We fed him. Well, we've always fed our dogs. We took him around. He just fat. Fat, dumb, happy corgi.
Stonk
That's awesome.
dog.
He's living the life, dude.
Dude, he was the happiest little guy on the planet.
I bet. Oh man, this
Now put him in space green armor. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, and the last one I have picked out is from Stephanie Schwartz, which is #LoreLies. The worst kept secret in Warhammer is that Ivrain has actually not been spending the time since the fight with the demon recovering. She's actually spending every second letting Gilliman put his battle barge in her wet portal.
knew where that joke was going the moment you said you've read.
I just knew it.
There's only one way those jokes do go.
Oh man. Oh, low-key kind of true though.
I mean, Colin's always whining we don't talk about the Eldar enough, so there we go.
That's exactly what I want. I got what I wanted out of these questions.
Truly infiltrated Imperial society.
You think the
So
Ultramarine chant is
Imperial
playing when
bros.
Gilliman's smashing?
Oh,
No, I
stop.
reckon it's not that it's playing. I reckon he has an Ultramarine choir standing at the side of the bed, just encouraging him.
Just shouting
Doing
theoretical
that.
and practical.
Oh
Yes,
my
Captain.
gosh.
Or flat. You need to be a bit sharper in your intonation. Yes, my lord.
Oh,
Rain.
gosh.
oh, your brain.
Ivrain,
Hashtag-
I'm practically coming.
Practical. I am enjoying this very much.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
theoretical. I am enjoying this very much. Practical. I'm coming. Anyway.
No, too early for
Ivrain,
this.
give me a practical and a theoretical.
Theoretical,
That's the
Eldar
stuff.
and humans cannot have children. Practical, only one way to find out.
Oh god, it's too early in the video.
I hate
dear.
stupid Eldar. Let's stop talking about these.
Okay.
Let's
So
talk about
we-
Real 10, and I don't want to hear it.
I end in chats.
Well, we have
Yeah, right.
a new question of the week, themed specifically after today's topic, and that question of the week is #greater good for what is one aspect of 40k lore you would remove for the greater good? Controversial, dumb, or stupid answers only, please, and that's #greater good.
The dumber the better.
There's one
may-
right answer to this. It starts
may-
with an E.
All right. May I give my example answer for the
Go
crowd?
ahead.
I would remove everyone's knowledge of the Emperor. I wouldn't remove the Emperor, just everyone's knowledge of his existence. Just because I think it'd be funny for mid-battle, a guardsman would be shouting, "For the what?" And their brain just blue screens for a moment, like, what am I fighting for? What's going on?
That would make an entire setting awkward.
The traitor legions completely forget, why are we rebelling? What happened? I know I hate them. Why do I hate them?
How would that affect the Emperor's children? Because that's their battle cry, and it's also their name.
There's no way we're shouting, we're going to go fight the
Where's my
children
dad?
in
They're
Warhammer.
just not minding orphans.
They're just-
I don't know what's happening.
They're just called the apostrophe S children now.
Ironically, I think the Tau would win if that happened.
Oh,
Imperium breaks apart. There's nothing holding them together anymore.
The only thing that keeps people from joining the Tau is their belief in the Emperor. And even then, they still join the Tau all the time, so frick.
no. Well,
Good point.
hopefully we'll cover some of
There's a lot of
that.
heresy going on here.
Well, hopefully we'll
Hello.
Gene the real Emperor.
Xeno W.
Forearm
Resounding
Emperor.
Xeno W.
Real. 100 fire emoji.
On God.
Well, we'll be covering some of the most recent Tau Enclave, Farsight Enclave lore with the Arks of Omen stuff. So we'll hopefully see if we get the Emperor raised later on in our discussions.
Okay, and with that done, I believe, Hal, you're doing the beginner section this week, so take it away.
Thank you very much, and I can't wait for Andy to suffer through this. If for everyone
Put some
who,
headphones in, listen to some, Mariah Carey or something.
for those who don't
Yeah.
know, I'll go ahead, so Colin.
And he's gonna just be editing his own videos. He's done with Lord Crimes for this episode.
Officially
I'll finish my
retired.
video for today.
For those who don't know, Andy is a Imperial simp, so therefore we're gonna he's strapped in, as you are strapped in, and we'll be listening to Commander Farsight of the Farsight Enclaves. Woo! A little bit excitement, boys. Some excitement.
He's blue.
He is in fact blue.
Indeed.
I have a joke about that later, but we'll get to. Well, let's just start off. We'll start off easy. We'll start off slow here, and then we'll get a little bit heretical, a little bit separatist, shall we say? But let's just start right at the beginning, and this is the character Commander Farsight. Now, you might be thinking, Farsight seems like a very normal name, perhaps, for a Xenos, and that's because it's not his real name. And you have to excuse me here whilst I flub and I absolutely butcher his true name. I think Eli might have to come in with an assist here.
Oh.
But his true name, which actually is titles, his name is Shas O Viola Shova Kais Montyur. So he's got a bit of a title thing going.
Sounds like a German car factory.
It does sound like something that's been yelled at me on a holiday. If I can say that without getting cancelled.
Props for saying that all in one go.
I know. I practice that, by the way. So if you're new to Warhammer, you're probably thinking, what the hell is going on? So Commander Farsight, it comes from the species of the Tau. And you're probably thinking, who are the Tau? The Tau themselves are a Xenos race that hail from the Ultima Segmentum within the sort of Warhammer universe / Milky Way galaxy. About 6,000 years ago in the 35th millennium, so obviously we're set in 40k, it was sort of first discovered by an Adeptus Mechanicus explorer fleet. They found this, I'll say, pretty crappy homeworld, the homeworld of Tau. Funny enough, that will come up again. And they found this Xenos race, and it was extremely primitive. They were dull creatures. They were at like a Stone Age level, supposedly. They commented saying they'd only ever mastered fire. Some of us here, obviously we're all Warhammer fans watching behind our comfy desks, so maybe some of these Tau are a little bit more useful in the wild than some of us. Not calling anyone out there. Ignore that.
He's making fun of me because I die in the wild in 10 minutes. There's no insulin plant, Barry.
His pancreas
Enjoy
just
the Alpha. We have free insulin.
all is covered by the greater good. I thought we need the has anyone here seen Hot Fuzz, the greater good? We just need that to come up every time. Everyone just has to say the greater good, the greater good.
The old lady behind the check-in at the hotel just being like, fascist, and it's just the Emperor just going hag and just shooting.
Oh, that movie's good. It has the guy who was the Hound in Game of Thrones, didn't it? But before he was he just says Yarp.
Oh, that's him? I didn't even realize. Yeah. Crazy. That's pretty
It's got
funny.
Bill Bailey in it as a twin. It's great. Morning Angle. Anyway,
I should see this movie.
Good movie.
You haven't seen?
Oh, please.
Come on. Okay,
What do you think?
I'm going to move on from that because I'm just going to get upset.
Yeah, let's move on.
That's what you get for a Xenos loving man. So the Tau themselves were obviously, with most of the way the Imperium works, it was about to get crunked immediately, cleanse the way for humanity. But no, this was not their fate, because behind warp storms, this kind of isolated homeworld would be trapped, and only be until the 41st millennium that the Imperium would, unfortunately to Andy's just pure hatred, they would discover a spacefaring Xenos race. And for the Tau themselves, I mean, we often joke they're the cowmen, and we'll explain a little bit why. The Tau themselves are actually a multi-species caste system. The actual ones that come from the homeworld of Tau themselves. They do look kind of humanoid, I'd say. Some of them obviously are vastly different, but today we'll be focusing on the Fire caste, which is the caste that Commander Farsight himself comes from.
You know they breathe through that weird slit in their forehead?
Oh,
That's what it does?
yuck.
They can breathe through it.
Oh, I did not know that. It's
Who-
neat.
Anyways, keep going.
Just like headbutting them, like choking them. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with that. Moving on. So the Tau themselves, they have many, obviously different species and subspecies, but they mostly have some shared features such as blue skin. If you're imagining Blue Man Group, that's an old reference there now, but they kind of look like Blue Man Group, but a lot of them. They often have like hoofed feet. I made a little, I guess, assumption that they probably definitely watch Sword Art Online, like Colin.
I'm going to kick your ass.
He has seen it, by the way,
Get him.
people.
Get him.
Someone did put a comment.
Never seen Sword Art Online.
Someone made a comment on like a previous podcast episode, like they said, "Stop talking about Sword Art Online and come here for Sword Art Online." Shout out to you, Greg.
Of all the things to make fun of before, and there are many, you choose one of the few weeb things I'm not into.
I know, but this is a weeb focus episode, so you're at home here. So the Tau themselves, as I said a little bit, they are much a caste system, but the subspecies of the Tau are very much isolated into all these classes, and like they have particular roles themselves. So the Fire caste themselves are the warrior class. All of that changed, I put here, when the Fire Nation attacked, because they're the other Fire caste. And this Fire caste themselves are a little bit taller than some of the more like stouter and like short like Earth caste themselves. They are a bit more muscular. Definitely not as muscular as a is that the right word? Muscular as a human. I think even an average weeb could probably like take one in a one-on-one fight.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
You're saying that the Tau skip leg day. Of course they do.
They probably do.
Firecasts are pretty shad. Come
Okay,
on.
okay. They are like
Yeah, weeb.
they do have
Can jungle fighter just like puh, you call them muscles?
they
They're both strength 3 on the tabletop, so it can go either way.
True.
yeah they're a little bit shorter. They're like short kings. Let's say my short king Tau, and the Firecast themselves, they lived on the plains of Tau, and they were originally like nomadic hunters, warriors. They often like fought between themselves. They're pretty aggressive, and this was all, again, this all changed with the Tau species when the mysterious ethereal caste came and they united all of Tau and turned it into this spacefaring Xenos race that it's known for in the 41st millennium. And this is where we get to perhaps the giggiest of chads, if that's the right way of saying it. This is where we get Farsight. And Farsight, I put here as a reference to beloved Colin. He's basically the Arbiter from Halo. And you'll basically see why it kind of follows that story a little bit.
Not gonna lie.
I don't know if is that right, Colin? Is there some...
I mean, I can see some connections. There are, now that you mention it, I can see some connections. However, Thel Vadam is at a whole other level of awesome than Farsight, I must say.
Well, hopefully we're going to change your opinion of that. So, Farsight himself was, of course, not born as the legend that he became. He's originally just born as Shas, or Shas-O, basically just saying he was born in the Tau set world of Viola. And what was special about this unique, well, not really unique actually, but this fire warrior was that he was a little bit of a cut above the rest. Obviously, he's Xenos. Sorry, Andy. Don't mean to... Not as good as humans, of course. Boo-boo. Terrible. But what was unique about the Firecast warrior that would become Farsight was that he learned from his mistakes, which many of us do not do. Let's be honest. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Definitely. So his ability to self-analyze and to improve was a cut above the rest. And this led him to sort of gaining a meteoric rise through the Firecast ranks. And this obviously would come up, his ability to be a little bit better, a bit stronger, to learn from his mistakes. That would all come to be on display as we get to some of his like more notable wars as he began to get older. Unfortunately, Tau don't live as long as humans, but Farsight has, let's say he's been around long enough, and there are reasons why he lives so long. So he kind of made a name for himself in the, excuse me if I mispronounce this, the Arkanasha War? Arkanasha War? Arkanasha.
Ayahuasca War?
The Emu War of Australia, probably. Whoever's editing that has to put a picture of an emu, and I'm so sorry. This was kind of the Tau Empire's first true meeting with the orc species. As in, this is the first time they actually had to fight on a scale they had never really experienced before. And after many battles, the Firecast warrior that would become Farsight, he stood out from the crowd, shall we say. He became a symbol for the Tau forces, and much of the ethereal cast, they actually allowed this to happen because there's nothing as inspiring as Tau man who crunk orcs beautifully, shall we say. And what was also incredible about him was that his ability to obviously learn from his mistakes meant that Farsight was one of the first to actually truly write down how battle doctrine would be used to fight orcs for even long after he is no longer with the Tau Empire. And then some more notable things that happened to Commander Farsight as he grew older and he kept slaying, shall we say, Yas Queen, he's on the runway. So he was also involved in, famously, the Damocles Crusade, which was the first contact of the Tau Empire with the Imperium of Man. I know, poo, so sorry, Andy.
Rokan and the White Scars, baby.
They, let's say everyone got bloodied in that one. We'll go into that in a bit more later. And
the Imperium came out worse.
Debatable.
We'll see. This is for the greater good, shall we say? The greater good. And this was the first conflict where there was some tension between Farsight and the ethereal cast, and this will be a big theme generally throughout his story. And there's actually many events that happened in the Damocles Crusade and Damocles Gulf, which is a location near the Tau homeworld, but we'll get more into that later. And this kind of accumulated, and this kind of tension between Farsight and the ethereals led to the incident at Arthas Moloch, which was the genesis of much of what happened in his story. And it was on the world of Arthas Moloch. There were some orcs involved. It was a bit spicy. There had been fights with the Imperium. Farsight was obviously just absolutely crushing it. And this is where they eventually would find demons would emerge on this world. And the Tau themselves are a very ignorant race, so this was just not expected. And it ended up killing all of the ethereals on this expedition. And this is also kind of, yes, everyone, it's more Xenos death. And this was where Farsight found his iconic blade. If anyone has seen the model of him, he has that gorgeous Dawn blade. We'll get more into that later. And this also led to the famous breaking away from Tau society, with Farsight kind of rejecting the overlordship of the ethereal caste, which led to the birth of the Farsight Enclaves, which I guess they're kind of like the good guys. I don't know what everyone else thinks maybe about them.
Yeah, the good guys, maybe.
They're kind of the better... Go ahead, Colin.
So probably about as close as you can get to in this setting, because Farsight doesn't really do anything. He's not a warmonger. He doesn't seek to conquer. He just he sits in his corner and says, "Just leave me alone. That's all I want."
He's been getting a little sus lately, but we'll talk about that in the future.
May I make an observation about what you just said?
Go ahead.
So you said he found a sword that was not made by the Tau, and then he left the Tau. So what you're saying is Farsight is the coolest Tau by how much he rejects everything about the Tau and doing his own thing. Amazing.
You could say that. That's definitely someone's opinion.
Socially and culturally, he's still aware that Tau Empire, very strong.
He still believes in
good
the
technology.
He's kind of like, he's the guy who goes away for university or college and he's come back a little different.
Oh, so it's on a gap year, is what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah.
Very long gap year.
He's grown his hair out. He's rocking like a tash for some reason.
The equivalent of getting dreadlocks done for the Tau. Yeah, it's a new look. Do you like it? And they're like,
I've just really found myself. Oh my god, he's been on a bit of a roll, shall we say. And with the breaking away from main Tau society and his rejection of the ethereal caste, this is the birth of the Farsight Enclaves, which is ruled essentially by Commander Farsight and I guess like a ruling elite. It sounds really bad, but like it's different from the Tau Empire, and we'll get more into its uniqueness, shall we say. And this is completely avoided any sway or influence from the ethereal caste, and it's still following the greater good, as Eli mentioned, but it's a unique faction that we'll be talking a bit more in depth about him as we progress into the expert section. Does anyone have any questions before we move on, or any kind of thoughts other than Xenos hate, Andy?
Well, not anymore. Now you've said that. All right.
Fair days. He's like, I'm doing my own thing.
Tough stuff, man.
Tough crowd.
I was going to ask how many Tau does it take to change it, but no, now you've said that. Okay.
All of them. They all work together.
A lot
Yeah,
less
it's for the
power.
greater good.
Change the bright bulb for the greater good. The greater good. So now I'll pass over to Eli to talk about something Eli loves his Xenos, for anyone who's kind of new.
Alright, debatable.
Oh, well, you could say, what was it?
I have a love-hate relationship with Xenos. I do like the Tau. And I love-hate the Eldar.
And
Gene
you don't love
Stealers.
them as much as the
I love
corruption
Gene
of
Stealers. That's
Slaanesh.
true. I'm a hypocrite. I love Gene Stealers.
So we'll
Consider the true Emperor. Don't worry about it.
well, no four-armed emperor today, unfortunately.
And
But
actually, I really like Necrons. So just don't listen to me. I like
Eli just loves heresy.
Necrons
Eli
are the
just
true
heretical.
rulers of the
He's like,
galaxy.
I love this Xenos, I love this, I love Chaos. It's like anything that's like heretical. I love it.
everything is a
I
lie.
just love Warhammer. I don't know what to tell you.
I like the funny tabletop guys. What can I say?
I have a hard time hating. I have a hard time hating on any specific faction. I just like it too much.
Unless they're who's the dwarfs now? What are they called?
Leagues of
Votan?
Votan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even want to
I'm
talk.
really
Yeah.
indifferent towards them.
I
I'm more
like
just
the-
grumpy that they made a new faction before updating all of the old ones. Plastic Phoenix Lords, give me my Plastic Phoenix Lords! No!
Speaking of Tau, I'll pass over to Eli to helm our expert section as we talk
Alright.
about Commander Farsight. Take it away.
Yeah, all right. Farsight is probably top 3 favorite characters in all of Warhammer for me. Maybe top 5. It's hard to say. I like Warhammer too much.
Yeah.
I will apologize to the viewers because in order for this episode to not be 3 hours, we kind of have to skim through things kind of quickly. But I'm gonna try my best to be detailed. Farsight is one of the 3 Tau that you're allowed to like without being a weeb. Otherwise, I got bad news for you. If you can like Farsight, you can like Anshi, and you can like Case. That's it. The other ones are just they're cringe, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
Mummy,
What are you-
Shadow
Are you a
Sun.
Dark Strider fan?
I was going to say Shadow Sun is the one I get like occasionally hear about, and I'm like, oh, cringe. Shadow Sun.
She can be kind of cool. Anshi is Jim Bro Ethereal, who fights in close combat. And Case is just like the most OP character in all of Warhammer.
He's Doom guy, just blue.
Yeah. You should read Fire Warrior if you haven't. It's a really old book, but I love it. He solos like entire Space Marine squads and stuff. He's ridiculous. He's too epic. But we're not talking about him today. We'll talk about him in the future maybe
Fake
if I
news.
am lucky enough
Propaganda
to.
against the great imperial of man is rubbish.
So Sho, or Shova, I guess, first name, was born on Viorla, which is basically Catachan but for Tau, except Catachan for Tau is like 1/50th of what Catachan actually is, I guess. Because, Catachans are a lot cooler than Tau, I'm not going to lie. But Viorlans are famous for their hot-bloodedness, their martial pride. It's a firecast planet. They're very speedy, great warriors. It's very hot there. The weather is pretty intense, and every 2 years it goes through a trial by fire, which is a very big firecast thing. And there's like plasma storms and stuff. They're very famous for their anger, which Farsight's anger burns very bright. It's one of his biggest flaws, probably, but also a big strength, I guess you could say. He has a pretty classic prodigy backstory. He's started training the moment he could walk, like every Firecast warrior. He starts his training early, 3 years early to be exact. He becomes known amongst his peers very quickly, and he gains the nickname Sho, which means inner light. It's a classic prodigy story, nothing overly fancy, top of his class, gets in trouble with the instructors because he's unorthodox and kind of wacky, etc., etc. But he graduates. He graduates under Pure Tide. Like Pure Tide doesn't teach them, but Pure Tide oversees their training. Pure Tide is a famous Tau commander who's part of the second Sphere expansion, if I remember correctly, and he's basically just Tau Sun Tzu, however you say that.
Is this kind of like
Art of War guy?
Is this like he's like Farsight's like Zuko and he's like the Pure Tide's like Uncle Iroh?
I guess it's kind of.
He's a bit
kind of.
We don't. There's no Aang yet, but like that's how I kind of say it.
Pure Tide wrote the Tau Art of War. Let's just say that he's.
Ooh.
Anyways, next after graduating from the baby Firecast, you join the regular Firecast, and you serve for 4 years as a Shazla, if I have that correct, Allah rank, which is just basic foot soldier. And Farsight quickly proves himself to be very efficient and good at his job. Everyone's crazy about him. He surprises everyone because he fights so close up and he's so fast. He's always fast to take the advantage whenever possible, and his skill with a pulse rifle in close range is like insane and never seen before. So his overseers and higher ups start placing him in the like thickest fighting and the most dangerous war zones to kind of test him. And he starts leading his squad basically, even though he's not a Shazwi yet. Eventually, fighting, blah blah blah, goes to his first trial of fire, which is the Firecast way of promotion, basically. You have to go through this test, and if you pass it, you get promoted. Of course, the test is pretty intense and violent, and his overseers, once again, maybe the ones in the past who are a little salty that he passed their tests so easily, and he outsmarted them all the time. They put him in a simulation, in which the simulation he sacrifices himself, and in order to pass the test, he has to die, and his squad mates who also died would pass the test, and those who didn't sacrifice themselves did not pass the test. He was also a thing in his training. He was popular for getting around all of his teachers' tricks, and he would basically try to see into their minds. He would think of all the tricks that he would place as a teacher and then plan accordingly. And I guess he's one of the only intuitive Tau to exist if he's the only guy doing that, but whatever.
The only intuitive Tau. Christ alive.
So then he gets promoted to Wii rank, or yeah.
Give him a Nintendo Wii. What?
I thought there was no weebs, right? No weebs in this story. Oh yeah.
Okay. But aside from that, he eventually gets the honor of donning the hero's mantle, which is a battle suit, and in order to kind of get him to put himself under control, get his temper under control and his violence under control, they put him in the broadside teams, which he's quite disappointed about when he first shows up for duty. And he's put with this fellow named Oblatai, who becomes one of his best friends in the future. Oblatai is just like this veteran Shazvray, if I have that correct. Shazvray, or I don't think he's a Shaz though. I think he's a Shazvray. And so basically he teaches Sho how to be patient and fight at a long range and not be crazy.
He shows him the ropes.
Sho gets the nickname of Young Executioner in this time, as he's just massacring things with his big gun. He hates being a broadside though, because as one of the broadside, you stay in the back while younger, less experienced, less equipped warriors do all the hard work for you, basically, and you're just a support role. So it kind of hurt him a lot to do that. So then we move on to the Arakan War, which I guess was part of his training with Oblatai as well. But he goes through he gets promoted to a whatever the bodyguard rank is. I guess he's probably a Shazria at this point. He's a bodyguard to Commander Dawnstone, and he's just too good. He's too good. So they put him through another trial by fire so that he can become a Shaz. It might be Shazel, something like that. But they put him through another trial by fire, and this time they're returning from this fight on the ship, and the ship is invaded by Arakan skitterlings, which are like Ripper swarms basically for Tyrannids. And Sho puts his body in the way of the door and holds off the skitterlings and is like eaten alive and goes to this horribly painful death. But it's all faked again. as Tau simulations are crazy. And he gets promoted again because he did his job so well. They were testing him, and he was a good job.
I have to
So now
say,
he's a commander in training.
I have to say, by the way, like Tau, like VR chat is
Yeah,
really
it's a little
different.
intense.
It reminds
It's
me
a
of
little
the,
intense.
it reminds me of, like, I've only ever seen a clip of it where a guy like is just saying in a VR chat room, "Wow, my granddad stormed the beaches of Normandy, and I'm here in VR chat." Oh Christ!
But in this time, him and Commander Dawnstone launched some really good Montka strikes. Montka is Farsight's favorite way of war that he later learns to master under Commander Puretide, and I guess put into his name because he's so good at it. Montka is basically like a spearhead strike, kind of like what the Black Legion does. Teleport strike, kill the enemy leader in one swift stroke. And hopefully things go right, because if they don't, then you have to run away or you die, basically. But he's very good at it, very swift, very fast. So he does that for a while, and then he goes and trains with Commander Puretide. He climbs up Mount Kanji, goes through a whole lot of trials there, and he trains with Shaz, Shazera, Commander Shadowsun. That's who that is, and Case. They become friends for the most part. Case and Shaz are both kind of like, I don't know, they're both very quiet individuals, and they're both kind of crazy, especially Case. He doesn't even see himself as a like living being anymore. He's just a weapon. But Case masters the way of Mont. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name. Feels bad, man. He's the one-man army, whichever one that was called. I unfortunately forgot what it was. Apparently, it's not for the Mont though. Monat, that's what it is. Shadowsun masters Kauyon, sorry, which is the way of the patient hunter. And this is basically what it says. You lay in wait when the enemy comes. You jump out and you kill them. It's very patient. It's very less casualty inducing than something like Mont Ka. But
So
it's
they've ripped off the Raven Guard. Tap, tap, tap.
yeah, it's just like regular strategies that you would think of, but they're just put into Tau words. There's a lot of Tau words that I don't know. You have to forgive me. I speak English, not Tau. So.
No worries. And as we all know, the Raven Guard invented the concept of stealth. No one figured it out before them.
Yep.
So Farsight becomes a master of Motka under Puretide's tutelage, and he gets sent off, basically. Unfortunately, Shadowsun and Case get put into stasis, but I guess, let's see, I believe I'm trying to remember if the Damocles Crusade happens with them. Yeah, it does. It totally does. Anyways, sorry. So we go to Arkanasha. Arkanasha is this wacky rust planet with rust storms that are seeming like there's murmurs that these rust storms are sentient almost. The ethereals, of course, say no to that. That's just ridiculous. And superstition's wrong, and there's no gods. You know, the whole Emperor to Horus spiel, and we all know how that went.
Yeah, and they couldn't even elect one person. They're like, right, we're all gonna just have like 7 of them go, yeah, gods.
In fact, spoiler alert. The Farsight rebellion is basically, it happens for the same reason of the Horus heresy almost. If they just told them about chaos, it probably wouldn't have happened.
As a slight aside as well, just for if someone is new to Warhammer, the Tau themselves, when they had their caste system, we've briefly touched on it. The ethereal castes are the ruling caste, and they're very much like just the way Tau society works is you just follow your set path. Like even then, correct me if I'm wrong, Eli, isn't it their names, like even Farsight's name is literally just like the job he does, and it'd be like someone saying my name is like where I live. So like if someone's like, I am London cleaner,
I am Norwich broom sweeper.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah,
Norwich broom sweeper.
I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, to be fair, how many medieval like peasants were named Smith?
Oh, it's true. To be fair,
Yeah.
is there equivalent in like Halo, Colin, of like? Because I'm not as familiar, but it's like. It's obviously there's like a slight hint of like what's meant to be like a communist influence.
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't believe there's anything super similar. Although the elites, they do add the suffix "e" to their names once they join the military. So the arbiter's name is Thelvedum, But when he joins the military, he's still Vedami.
That's kind of cool.
So I
He's
mean,
voiced by Keith David, who
he
is a
is
legend.
and
Amazing
God,
in Community.
wonderful.
And the
ethereals
Princess
are
and the Frog
like
and
the
Princess
ethereals are
Mononoke.
like yeah. The Covenant and the Tower are basically the same thing. If the Tower, I mean, the Covenant are a little bit more cooler,
Little bit meaner.
chatting. Yeah.
And then the Space Marines activating Grunt birthday party when they go to fight the tower.
Yeah. Basically, they're conglomerate of Xenos, just like the Covenant, and the Prophets are like literally copy paste ethereals. Not gonna. I mean, I guess other way around.
The
but
ethereals aren't questioned like at all though in Tau society, like
they have
to a
absolute
point.
authority, and questioning the ethereals is like unheard of. And Farsight does it more than once before he becomes a traitor.
Because he's such a
The
hothead.
And the
I don't know if
ethereals.
I'm... Oh, sorry.
Oh, you first.
I was just going to say, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I've heard possibly propaganda that they have like a pheromone or something that they use to control the populace.
Still like
or...
unconfirmed. Technically, I think but that's like the theory.
More or less what I was going to say. They smell so good that
Yeah,
they mind control everyone.
They distribute Link's Africa to all
Oh.
citizens.
They've
Axe
got
body
the-
spray for Americans.
I was going to say, yeah, they've got the
Gosh,
perfect
Yeah,
axe
yeah,
body
that's
spray.
probably more like the Space Marines. Like, right, we're going off to war. Get the axe out.
That's how they counter the mind control. They bombard the planet with axe bombs.
Jeez. Okay, so where was I? Arkanasha, or to the orcs, they call it Orkunasha, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, come on, orcs. I love orcs, to be fair. They're such good relief, comic relief.
I could not find my Farsight Enclave supplement book, so I couldn't read the whole conflict, which I was really sad about because it has cool lore. But basically, from what I remember, the Tau people are all in domes because you can't really survive outside. Otherwise, you live in a Mad Max world and you breathe dust and you die. And there's sentient rust storms all around. And now there's orcs on Arkanasha and they're overrunning the place and they're like slaughtering Tau. And Farsight shows up and becomes the hero of Arkanasha, which is one of his titles, one of his names. And I believe this is also where he gets the name Farsight, if I remember correctly, because he becomes famous for reading the enemy and knowing what they're going to do before it happens and counterattacking them before they even know what they're going to do. He's Jotaro or whatever, one of them. The guy who says, and now you'll say, yeah, Joseph.
That's Joseph.
Isn't that
Joseph,
Yeah,
the best one.
Yeah, he's Joseph Joestar.
Partial to
but,
Josuke.
He literally fights battles where it's like 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, like insane odds. And he wins all the time, but it's still like a grinding, horrible war. And he's there for 10 Tau Seer, which is basically 10 human years, which is like 1/6 of a Tau's life. They only live to like 60, 70-ish. They have a pretty low lifespan. They can get surgery similar to Imperials. They can't be like immortal though, like the Imperial surgeries can. They'll probably die eventually.
I'm just imagining a custodian looking at it, and I'm just doing that meme where it just says, pathetic.
He has some really epic battles on Arkanasha. We won't talk about them today in detail, unfortunately. But yeah, Farsight's freaking so cool. If you somehow magically get the chance to pick up the old Farsight Enclave supplement book, you should. But I mean, I'd be surprised if you could. I'm just really bad at pirating things, so I couldn't find it.
We don't endorse that on Lorecrimes. I'm just saying that now before we get in trouble.
We are redacting that statement.
We buy all of our Warhammer books.
I actually buy a
GW.
surprising amount. I'm not gonna lie. I don't because I'm technologically illiterate. But
I think
Listen, a criminal came into Eli's house and downloaded all of these free Warhammer torrents. Eli's still
And left.
and Sword Art
download a
Online.
part. No.
I'm gonna
So
be in 3 weeks from the date of this recording, Hal. I'm gonna be in England. I'm gonna come
Oh.
kick your ass.
I'm going to film it.
Now, if I remember correctly as well, here Farsight also Farsight invents the way of the short blade or the way of the broken sword. Those are two different things. I think Montclaw is the way of the short blade, and then Farsight creates the way of the broken sword, which is basically just fighting more than 100 meters away from your enemy. Whoa, crazy, don't do that, bro. You can't do that around here.
To be honest, so when you said the way of the broken sword, I thought you were going to say, and then you have to go into a room and you have to find lots of disparate items and then see what you can combine to solve a puzzle. But that's a very obscure reference to an old game.
Most notably, though, Farsight makes the Book of the Beast, which is very sus by Tau standards because you're not allowed to write if you're in the Firecast or play with Lego or
read.
or read.
You're all illiterate and you have guns.
When Omba catches the baby Firecast playing with Mega Blocks, he's sending the drones your way.
Oh my god.
So over.
Is this literally the meme of like, back when you were all reading, I was studying the blade?
Yeah, it's called Vashtia, which means between spheres. And so Farsight starts getting allegations of being Vashtia, because if you do something else outside of your cast, they don't like it.
Imagine like there's like in a high school, you got like the Earth cast and like some Mechanicus studying for some test, and then Farsight comes and pushes them in the lockers. You doing nerds reading?
Dunks their head in the toilet and you see the air bubbles coming out of their weird nose.
So Farsight in this Book of the Beast, he deciphers the orc language. Even more sus. You can't just do that. You can't do the watercast job, bro. That's whack. Otherwise, we'll return to the Mont Tau, and everyone's gonna kill each other again, and we're all gonna die. Oh yeah. So basically, in the Tau's past, they were all killing each other because they were the casts are so different. Than the ethereals came from nowhere and fixed everything overnight magically. It's not suspicious at all.
With the brilliant idea of how about you don't stab each other just for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Basically, the Firecast and the Earthcast were killing everyone because the Firecast were the only guys who could lift a rock, and the Earthcast were the only guys who could put two sticks together. So naturally, the diplomatic, the really good diplomats and the really good airplane flyers weren't so great when there was no airplanes to fly and no diplomacy to be had. So the ethereals fixed it, and now you're not allowed to do anything that your cast would normally do. So don't play with Legos, or Anva is literally going to kill you. Oof. So he makes the Book of the Beast, which he gets allegations of Vashtia for, but it's basically I don't know, it's really huge. It makes them understand the orcs. At least the orcs they fight on Arkanasha, they're in for a bit of a nasty surprise when they find the cunningly brutal orcs instead of the brutally cunning orcs, because they only understand the brutally cunning orcs right now. He also discovers that the biggest orcs are the leaders, so they start killing the biggest orcs. Yeah, they win they win on Arkanasha. Or sorry, they don't. Farsight doesn't win. He actually gets cucked pretty hard. Pardon the language, I guess. He dons the red armor, though. That's where the red armor comes from, is Arkanasha, because it's a red rust planet. So he dons the armor. In the book, him and Brightsword and Bravestorm, who become part of the Eight later, and I think Albatai, they're all chilling on a hill. And it's the climax of the war, and the war can be tipped with the balance of one hunter cadre, which is like a formation of units of warriors for the Firecast. And they're awaiting these reinforcements, and this orca drops down, and Farsight's like, all right, you can fit like a few units of crisis battlesuit to like a couple commanders, and that's all he needs to win this war that he's been fighting 10 years for. And unfortunately, all that comes out of the orca is Giga Chad Anshi and with his two ethereal guards. And Anshi's the only ethereal that Farsight really ever has a connection with. And he's a real one, basically, Farsight says. He can tell that he's genuine, and that even when he's delivering bad news, his smile makes it all better, and he's a nice guy. He fights orcs 1v1 in close combat, which is freaking epic. He basically comes to Farsight, and he says, there's going to be no reinforcements, and it's time to go. Sucks, bro. And that's it. No one knew how to say no to the ethereals at this point, so they all leave the war. And unfortunately for them, if you leave orcs, the orcs just come back and repopulate really quickly. The Firecast does come back to Arkanasha and wins, though, which perhaps proves Farsight's point correctly that they could have just won then and there with some reinforcements. And this is the first time of a bit of a pattern that the ethereals don't give reinforcements to Farsight, but it gets a lot worse in the future. So he comes back from Arkanasha, and bam, the Imperials are there now because the goofy Tau expanded a little too far into the Damocles Gulf and took some Imperial planets. Yeah, they took some lightly defended Imperial planets, and the Scarlords and the Ultramarines, if I have that correctly, were sent to go dispatch the Tau and kill them. And they like steamroll the first few planets, and then they come to a grinding halt at Dalith, one of the core Sept worlds. Farsight and Shadow Sun battle the Imperials here, and Farsight kind of like baffles them because the Tau fight at long range, and now all of a sudden this guy's fighting at short range and he's really fast. What the heck do we do about that? So he fights a real good war against the Imperials, and technically the Tau win. Technically, but it's only because High Fleet, Leviathan or Behemoth or whatever, Tyrannid High Fleet, entered the galaxy and was going towards the Imperium, and so the Ultramarines and Scarlords have more important things to do. They have bigger fish to fry.
They got an assist. That's all they got.
Yeah.
Just 5 points instead of the full 10.
Yeah. So they negotiate a peaceful, kind of peaceful, I guess, retreat. And the Watercast tells everyone that, hey, we won, woohoo! But in reality, the Imperium was very close to breaking Dilith, and if they broke Dilith, because it was a war of attrition, and the Imperium doesn't lose wars of attrition, then they probably could have just gone into the Tau Empire and literally destroyed all of it. So
They
if it
were
weren't for the
probably
Tyranids,
how
the
many people
Tau...
can we send? Like 10. Oh, that'll do.
Yeah.
We can't spend 2. We've got more important wars to fight. We'll just send this many. Oh, is it a bit of a pain? We'll come back later. It's fine.
So if the Tyranids didn't show up, the Tau Empire might not exist right now. Not gonna lie. Maybe not to that extreme of an extent, but I don't know. Farsight has some epic battles though, and they record all of them, and they play Farsight's battle with his bros pretty consistently throughout all the town squares and stuff for the next, forever basically. Farsight becomes a complete hero, and Shazera doesn't get much attention because obviously Kauyon strikes and whatever are a lot less flashy than Big Mot Ka. 100 battlesuits descending from the sky to burn alive all the Space Marines and kill everybody. It's a little more morale boosting, I guess.
Is that the meme with the guy who's got his arm around his girlfriend? And what's the Shadow Sun one? It's his arms around that girlfriend, and he's looking behind him going, ooh, and then it's the Monka or whatever. And he's looking back at the other girl.
Monka is definitely a lot cooler and more Chad. Farsight actually honors, he values honor a lot more than other Tau, because obviously Tau combat's not overly chivalric. You just kill someone from 3 kilometers away in your big tank.
Oh no, they're fighting smart.
Yeah.
They're all a bunch of campers. Cowards. Fight up close. Come on.
Yes,
Ugh.
exactly.
Yes, please run into range of my chainsword. I know you have a gun that can melt me from 3 miles away, but please don't use it. That's cringe.
But it's kind of, even when you're reading the Tau books and you're like, oh, the Tau are cool, when they're talking about the Imperials, you're just you almost want them to lose. Because the Tau think they're so great, and they're the best empire out there, and no one can beat their might, and the humans are so ignorant and barbaric. But then they fight Space Marines, and it's oh, we're gonna lose. There's nothing, and then they do lose.
I mean, they're
yeah. The Gueron Shah is what they call Space Marines, and they're pretty scared of them. But like I said, Farsight and Shadow Sun successfully fend off the first Damocles Crusade. I don't remember what Case is doing. Unfortunately, Case has 2 books, and the first one is 20 years old, and the second one, he just shows up for a little bit, and it's kind of cringe. And
he shows up and it's cringe. Oh man.
Just yeah.
He was on Karava fighting the Blood Ravens.
Oh yeah, he's in Dawn of War.
Yeah,
Dawn of War is kind of, I don't know if you can count Dawn of War lore that well. I mean, you can. You can. It doesn't really fit Case though, because he's not really a commander. I think they just wanted to put him in because he's in the first video game. But his way of war is literally the one-man army. So he doesn't do much. Yeah, he's not much of a commander.
You send him in, and then everything else disappears.
Yeah.
It's like Sly
Yeah.
Marbo, isn't it? Of Tau.
Yeah. Yeah, he is literally a sly marble of Tau. That's a good way to put it. In his recent book, though, he fights some Dark Angels, and he just, like, loses. And it's like, what the heck? What was the point of that?
Sounds
Oof.
about right.
Yeah. Anywho, on Dilith, if I remember correctly, one of the Battlesuit Bros, Monat as well, they have this like time stasis field, and the chapter master of the Scar Lords gets trapped in this time stasis field with this battlesuit, and like and it's a cool little monument, I guess. Scar Lords want to come back someday and get him back, but I'm pretty sure the Scar Lords are basically dead now because of what happens coming up here. Sad for them, I suppose. After Damocles, though, they put Shadow Sun and Case to sleep, which is feels bad for Farsight because they're his two only friends, basically. Well, the two that he can really relate to, because Commander of Pure Tide's training is like an inhuman. You would like no one would ever understand the things that they went through except for each other. I guess before they put them to sleep, they have this little council though, and they call Farsight and his buddies all to the what's it called? Elemental Council. Shadow Sun is there. Case is not, because who knows what Case is doing literally ever. Yeah, I don't know. But they tell him basically that they're going to retake the Damocles Gulf that was taken away by the Imperials, and they want Farsight to do it instead of Shadow Sun. And Shadow Sun has more victories under her belt, and she doesn't have the stain of defeat like Arkanasha. And so she's pretty grumpy, and Farsight even says, why not Shadow Sun? And they just said, because I said so. And in this part, we meet poor Malcor, which is a water caste fellow who is he's a little weird because he can't lie, and the water castes are all about lying because they're diplomats and politicians, so it's all they're good at.
So they give him the worst diplomat ever. Like, just...
Yeah, so he only tells the blunt truth, but naturally Farsight's into that, so he takes him along. Unfortunately for I don't remember her name, but poor Malcor's mentor, poor Malcor talks out in the Elemental Council, and he's basically tells them that the ethereals want to get rid of Farsight, and he speaks out against the ethereals. And him and his mentor get called to a summons, and he doesn't show up because he's busy killing an Earthcast guy because he's insane.
Yo, what's going on, bro? Who is this guy?
he's there's something about him that we'll talk about later. I guess that'll come up pretty quickly. But there's a little scene where his mentor is talking with Anva, who's not Ethereal Supreme at the moment. He becomes Ethereal Supreme later. He dies, lol. The Imperials kill him. But at this point, Anva tells her to take out her bond knife, which is something most Tau have because they make bond mates with other people in their caste, basically. And it's like an unbreakable bond of brotherhood and sisterhood and stuff. And he says, take out your knife and kill yourself. And she does. And that's the end of her. And this is the first little showcase of the ethereals kind of, you don't question the ethereals or you disappear forever.
Doesn't she do it because, like, I think I remember this, like, she does it with the knife, but then she's not even conscious of doing it. She'll just, like, her body moves by itself, doesn't it? It's really creepy.
Oh, I should also say, I forgot to mention, after the Damocles Crusade, the ethereals commanded Ovesa, which is one of Farsight's buddy. He's an Earthcast genius. He's kind of like the friend that you disagree with on everything, but you're still friends, even though you like. He ticks you off all the time, and he makes Farsight angry all the time. He kind of ignores. He misses the point a lot, and in like sensitive situations, he'll just kind of we lost 5 million billion dudes in this experiment. That's okay because I made this experiment for the greater good. And then Farsight's like, bro, nah, you killed 5 million billion people. That's cringe, bro. And Ovesus doesn't really get it, and he doesn't care. But he's a genius, and he also is kind of, what's the word? Eccentric, like Farsight. So Farsight keeps him around. He's like his personal scientist almost. Ovesa creates this thing called the Pure Tide engram chip, which has Pure Tide's brain on it, and you put it into commanders, and it's basically kind of like the Codex Astartes, but for the Tau. And now they have a chip in their brain that lets them adapt to any situation and kind of have pure Tai's teachings take over.
I love that. Like, Codex Astarte is like, we made this high-tech chip, blah, blah, blah. And Codex Astarte is like, a book will do. Like, you just need a book. It seems like so complicated for the parallel.
But this kind of lets them, it kind of lets pure Tide, what's the word, possess them, almost. Unfortunately, they can't really... There's some issues with the project, and they can't really come back from the possession. So the ethereals order it to be removed, and in order for them to be removed, they have to be lobotomized and just become these drooling messes of Tau. Unfortunately, they are the blades of pure tide. They're really cool, and then bad stuff happens. But Shavastos, one of Farsight's friends, who also becomes part of the Eight later, has this pure tide chip in him, and Farsight lies to Anva when he's supposed to be bringing Shavastos to be lobotomized. And if I remember correctly, he basically tells him that Shavastos was killed in duty. And from Farsight's perspective, he claims that Anva knows that he lied to him, and lying to an ethereal's face is you die, it's a death sentence, it's unheard of. And this is the first time he kind of lies to an ethereal, and it haunts him forever. But he still does it, and he saves his friend, and Ovace is in on it too, and Ovace is okay with it, I guess, because he just wants to experiment on Shavastos because he's kind of crazy. We do see Shavastos later. So he lies to Anva. That's a good detail to leave in, which is probably why they want him to go on the Damocles Crusade, because they kind of just want to get rid of him and go spend your last few fighting years fighting off the Imperials. And then his last conversation with Pure Tide, he goes up for some wisdom, and Pure Tide tells him, don't trust them all. Right after this, the ethereals have Farsight bring up a little jellyfish mind device to put on Pure Tide so that they can trace his memory and make an AI out of him, because according to the ethereals, he's not going to live for much longer, which confuses Farsight because he thinks last time I saw him, he was old, but he was he's like that invigorated old where you're at, what's the interstellar guy, go into the light fighting or whatever. I don't know the whole spiel. But he's in the winter of his years, but he has a long time ahead of him. So Farsight's a little confused about this. He puts the jellyfish thing on his head, and it basically kills Pure Tide, unfortunately. It traces his memory, and they make a almost perfect AI of him, but it does lead to his death. So this also haunts Farsight. And this is a common theme where someone who doesn't trust the ethereals or someone who wants to speak out against the ethereals just disappears. Who knows what happens to them? I don't know. They died of old age, or poorly photoshopped footage of them dying on the battlefield or whatever.
So the ethereals are basically 40K's version of Stalin. Just people disappear. They're they're crossed off from pictures.
Basically. So now we're going to launch the Damocles Crusade, and it's this gigantic gathering of all the casts. There's the sky is blotted out by air cast ships. It's a really cool little thing. Farsight gives a little speech, and the weight on his shoulders is immense. He can't even, Farsight's a little worried at this point. He brings poor Malcor along with him, which is good to remember, and his personal pilot, Koro Li Mao Tang, who's this really kindly old guy who's just a really good pilot, but he kind of is a little important later-ish. Anyways, they go out onto the expedition, and Farsight stays awake for the journey, which most Tau don't, because Tau don't live very long, and they don't have faster-than-light travel. Because, I don't know, they can't travel in the warp, but they use ZFR engines, if you must say Z instead of Z, which they do in the book, so I'll say it. Whatever. I'm Canadian, so I should say Z anyways. Who cares? I'm a Z fan, not gonna lie.
Be better than you are. Say Z.
What you mean, World War Z?
Engine.
That film.
Yeah, okay.
Yuck.
All right. First of all, book. The book.
Oh yeah, because you haven't seen films, have you?
I have seen the film, and it was nothing like the book.
Of all the films to have seen as well, with your track
Oh,
record,
My dad wanted to see it, so we watched it at my grandma's, and it sure was a zombie
and you
movie.
haven't seen Shaun of the Dead before. What? Oh gosh.
I mean, I never said I didn't see it. I also very pointedly didn't mention seeing it.
Farsight stays up for the long haul. They call it like what do they call it? The something of years, the price of years, something like that. Which the air cast nobly takes because obviously your pilots can't really go to sleep. I mean, they kind of can't. It doesn't matter. Poor Malcor stays awake and kills another guy. So he's living his best life, and he got bullied because he couldn't tell lies, so he kills this guy. He wakes him up in cryostasis and like overloads him with stimulants and drugs, and the guy like bashes his head against the window until he like explodes and dies and bleeds to death. And it's something.
There's the
It's
Warhammer. There's the Grim Dark
Yeah.
vibe.
There's the Warhammer we all know
Yeah.
and love.
I will say, Fire Warrior, the case book is like a perfect Warhammer book. We should say that. You should read it. It's a perfect grimdark, really gritty, bloody book. You don't get that as much anymore. It feels like.
Is it still with the video game cover where he's like sat? Well,
Oh, yeah.
he's knelt on like
He's
a
on,
big
like,
pyramid of
skulls.
skulls.
Yeah, it's such a cool book, man. To be fair, I read it when I was like 12 years old, so it might not be as good as I remember, but I like to think it is. Anyways, we should probably keep talking about Farsight. I'm sorry, viewers, if you came for an hour and a half long episode, I have bad news. We're gonna be here for a while. So on the Dawn Pioneer, no, is the Dawn Pioneer a Halo ship? Or am I right? I'm pretty sure the Dawn Pioneer is the flagship.
There's the
that flies
forward
Dawn.
onto yeah, no,
You know,
there's
then
the
we're
door
good.
of autumn and
Dawn Pioneer.
forward onto dawn.
Yeah, okay. So the Dawn Pioneer is the Tau ship. Farsight spends most of his time studying and talking a little bit with his psychic, this Inquisitor, who is a biomancer. The Tau don't know that, though. She's just a Guevesa, which is a, like, human helper. Is that right? I think so. But her name is Vikala Neve Harat. She goes by, something Delac. They call her Mistress Delac. She's an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, and she's undercover kind of investigating the Tau. So she's there. She talks with Farsight a bit. She has, the tarot card on her forehead. I didn't know how big the Emperor's tarot was until recently. I guess a lot of people take it really seriously. Makes sense. But she's a cool little psyker who hangs out with them and helps them understand some of the Imperial stuff. She was on Dalith, and they captured her, and they, being the silly Tau that they are, just assumed that these prisoners would be fine to take on as advisors, and they have no ulterior motives whatsoever.
I mean, the Tau seem to have naivety as a character trait more than anything.
Yeah, they're extremely naive. I should say, poor Malcor, before this all happened, he was investigating an Imperial warp drive, and he was there to translate the Imperial runes on it because he translates foreign languages as his thing. And he touches the warp drive by accident, and then he starts killing people all of a sudden. And he cuts his tongue into two like a snake.
Oh.
Fun. He's a fun little guy, goofy little guy. All of a sudden, oh no, the Scarlord showed up, and they're gonna kill us all. And they've launched a boarding assault on the Dawn Pioneer, and I have a bit of a hard time. I had a bit of a hard time understanding this part because the way it was worded, the Dawn Pioneer was like hours ahead of the rest of the fleet. For some reason, like it's the flagship, which makes sense, but they don't have time to get reinforcements to the Dawn Pioneer because it's so far away from everyone else. I don't really know why.
It's because Tau are terrible at strategy, I suppose.
I-
All they know
Or
is shoot
slow.
from the back, and they took that too literally with the space warfare. They're like, "Well, stay all the way
maybe-
back here."
I maybe just like misunderstood something. I guess I don't know. Coral Lee Tang is flying the ship though. No, he's in a Manta. There's another pilot who's a little bit important, but we'll ignore him for now, I guess. So the Scarlet Lords show up with the Chapter Master. Yeah, the Chapter Master with his command squad launches a boarding assault on the Dawn Pioneer. Unfortunately for the Tau, everyone is asleep except for like a few people, mainly Bravestorm and Oblatai. Those are like the only two guys of note who are awake, plus a few Firecast bros. I guess we should say another character. There's a lot of characters. Bravestorm, on Dalith, he 1v1s lots of Imperial tanks and stuff with an Honor Gore Gauntlet, which is just a power fist for a battlesuit. So they got some melee. They have a little bit of melee. Him and Bright Sword, which is a clone. Bright Sword died in the battle against the Imperials originally. Bright Sword uses the fusion blades, which are like fusion blasters, but they're always on and they're blades, they're like melee weapons kind of. But Bravestorm is alive. He was mortally wounded though, and now he's basically in a dreadnought, but for Tau. So he's still alive in the current lore. So I assume it works like a regular dreadnought where he just lives forever. Because
It's a Tau dreadnought. Could you call it a dreadnought?
Yuck.
But yeah, Bravestorm is this very noble, self-sacrifice kind of guy. Very, he has a huge hatred for the Imperials, so he gets kind of crazy when he fights them, and he's very headstrong. Headstrong is a very common theme amongst Farsight and his buddies. Bravestorm and Oblatai go to intercept the Imperials where they can, so they split up. Bravestorm does a really good job at first, but then he gets his butt kicked by the Chapter Master and some other guys. And, as it should be, because they're Space Marines and they're in Terminator armor. Oblatai does a good job for a while, but then he loses to a squad of Space Marines as well and uploads his consciousness into a stealth suit. And he kills some other characters, goes back, whatever.
Oh, so he's a VTuber now.
Yeah. Farsight was told by Ovesa that there's an experimental battlesuit that he's working on prior. And this experimental battlesuit happened to be in the hangar, and Ovesa basically tricked him into using it as a test subject. Ovesa's asleep right now, mind you. And Farsight gets a blip from poor Malcor, who conveniently knows about warp drives, and that the Imperial ship came out of translation too quickly, and if Farsight damages the warp drive, it'll cripple the entire ship. Farsight doesn't know how he knows this, but he trusts him, because he's blunt and he hasn't heard him lie yet. So Farsight takes the experimental battlesuit, which is the Cold Star battlesuit, which is just on the tabletop. It's just really fast. I don't know if it's the same anymore, but last edition you can move like 60 inches in one turn with it if you wanted to.
Shite. That's a lot.
Yeah. Farsight takes this battlesuit, and he goes out into space to literally 1v1 the entire Imperial battle cruiser of the Scarlords, like their flagship. He shows up to the ship, and Cold Star is an AI, and he eventually becomes friends with this AI. They have a little dynamic. Excuse me. He times it correctly so that he can enter the ship through the gun hatch, through a gun, like a cannon.
That was sick.
Yeah. He goes in there, he takes a burst cannon and slaughters all the Imperial Navy men, poor guy. And poor Malcor also conveniently knows where exactly the warp drive is and how to get to it. So Farsight gets to it. He has to leave his battlesuit. He has a bit of a tassel with these giant servitor things, and he gets them to kind of destroy the warp drive for him. And then, these wacky, spooky, weird Xenos creatures that look like they're made out of shadows and nightmares are all of a sudden appearing on the ship. And I don't know where these came from, but there's definitely not another dimension, and demons don't exist, so it's just a weird Xenos race that's somehow here now. And it starts to invade the Scarlord ship. And Farsight flees. He has a bit of a tassel with a Helldrake, which has also appeared from the warp now, after the warp drives are damaged. And then, while this is happening, on the bridge of the Dawn Pioneer, not the bridge, just wherever the water casks are, poor Malcor showed up to kill another guy. And I think he actually does successfully, but Space Marines show up. And poor Malcor fends off the Space Marines with some real sus magic that Tau aren't supposed to have. Yeah, I wonder where that's going. Mind science, they call it. It's so tilting. The Tau call psychic powers mind science, and it perplexes them every time because they have no idea how they're doing it, and there's no logical explanation.
They're what are those things? They're just mind ghost.
Yeah,
science ghosts. They're science ghosts. It's fine.
Yeah. The true mind science is knowing how to do your taxes correctly.
Yeah.
Hardly a far shot from what the Emperor was saying.
Yeah. True.
What are those things? They're aliens. Why do they keep appearing across the galaxy? Don't worry about it.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. You got a bolter. You'll be fine.
So, Farsight causes a demon incursion, And when he touches the warp drive, I'm pretty sure he touches it. He touches something, and he gets this flash of a vision, and he sees himself kind of as this like melting statue, and he sees Shadow Sun pointing her gun at him with the intent to kill him, and like shattering him as a statue, which later does happen in the future after Farsight's like betrayal is made public, even though it's not like his betrayal isn't really even a betrayal. He just doesn't come back home, and so the ethereals are like, "Oh, he's a bad guy. We hate him now."
I mean, that is going AWOL.
Yeah, it's true. I don't even know if they expected him to come home though, because like, that's for later. Whatever. So he has visions of the future and this odd symbol of a hexagrammaton, which he remembers for later, which comes in handy. He leaves, obviously, fights with the Helldrake, survives. Li Mao Tang actually picks him up in his big manta, which is a cool little moment. And while he's unconscious in this manta, because he was rendered unconscious and basically dead from the fight, the epistolary of the Scar Lords senses the warp breach on their ship, and decides that there's nothing they can do about it, so they have to abandon ship basically. So naturally, like a true Imperial, they set the ship for a ramming course to the Dawn Pioneer, and the Dawn Pioneer cannot escape this because there's no time. I don't know, whatever. I think you can say whatever you want in space combat, and it counts because it's technically never happened before.
Starship go bash.
Yeah. So I guess the Imperials go towards them, and the Dawn Pioneer can't escape for whatever reason. And the Ethereals have all the higher ranks evacuated from the Dawn Pioneer, because the ship has the majority of the Tau the fleet on it, who are just sleeping. So they have everyone of We rank, if I'm correct. Yeah, that's correct. They have everyone of We rank and higher evacuated, but not any of the like basic troop ranks. So how they still have manpower after this is kind of hard to tell. But they do. I guess it is said that they lose a third of their manpower in this. When Farsight comes to, they've crossed the Gulf. Everything's fine because, I mean, they did destroy the Imperial ship. The Scarlords had to run away. But Farsight discovers that the Ethereals commanded this evacuation and lets like thousands of Tau die. And he was extremely angry, and he publicly like gets mad at the Ethereals and yells at them and goes and like it's unheard of, and everyone's shocked, and it's like it's insane. It doesn't seem like much to us, but I don't know what a good anthology would be.
Well, he's just like, you can't criticize the supreme leader. How dare you?
Yeah,
that's naughty.
Yeah, I guess if you were just some bro and you stood up and went to Kim Jong-un and like told him that he's wrong.
I was thinking, if you lived in North Korea and you were like, hang on a minute.
Yeah. The Ethereals forgive him this one time, but they say if he does it again, then he'll be publicly like exiled or executed, basically. They also tell Farsight, after, killing a third of their fleet, that there's no reinforcements on the way either.
Wow, that happened again?
Yeah. He has to make do with what they have, because it makes a little bit of sense. It is almost fair, because Tau lost a ton of manpower in the Damocles Crusade with the Imperium, obviously. And the Ethereals already sent basically everything on this third sphere expansion, so they don't really want to commit anything else. So Farsight has to make do with what he has. But it is enough through Farsight's wacky means, thinking outside the box. They arrive on Viorlas, which is not Viorla. It's Viorla's like sister planet, basically. And it's this world covered in volcanoes, and there's some jungle, and it's just really hot. And it's perfect for, it's the energy breadbasket of the system, of the Enclaves, is what they call it. Perfect for the Imperials, who create these factories, inside of the volcanoes, basically. And the Tau were enslaved on this planet, and every time they've tried to start an uprising, they fail. And there's little scenes where they have conveyor belts with Tau prisoners on them, and they're, getting thrown into the lava, and basically becoming energy for the Imperial factory.
Ugh.
So it's very
Sounds about right. Sounds efficient. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Farsight's not too pleased about this. They make planetfall on viewerless, because I guess there's nothing keeping them from doing that. I still don't understand how void warfare works, so don't. Maybe I'm just stupid. Um, but they make planetfall, and they meet up with Shadow Sun's pupil, Moata, who's master of Kauyon, who will work well with Farsight because Farsight's bad at it. They work together in some, like, basically just some guerrilla warfare, destroying, I don't know, armored convoys and other such things where they can. And then they assault the factories, and they have these big battles with the Admech because the garrison on the planet still outnumbers the Tau like 2 or 3 to 1, I'm pretty sure. And they try to defeat them one time with a big, fast assault. And Farsight's relying on these horribly like impoverished, the classic imperial worker who's downtrodden and enslaved and has the worst life ever. Farsight thinks if they launch a big Montka on one of these factories and start fighting, that the factory workers will join them and have an uprising against their overseers. And unfortunately, as they're fighting, the imperial workers just keep working, even like as they're getting gunned down and everything by the crossfire. It's a very depressing sight for the sad dogs of the Imperium. But I mean, hey, they're doing their due diligence.
They did their daily prayers, and they're doing a good job.
That's right. That's right. But they fight the Admech, and quickly find out that the Admech and Imperial Guard have like unlimited resources. And even though they're creating like mountains of bodies on the other side of the room, they're starting to lose the battle. So they have to retreat for a while and think of a new plan. So Farsight decides to do some little Vashia stuff and works with Ovesa to come up with this plan to use these seismic fibrillator type things that will trigger volcanic eruptions all across the world. This would basically render the world useless for the Imperials because all of their factories are in the volcanoes, which the Tau are quick to criticize because it's inefficient and brutish and whatever. And so they do this in a bit of a close battle. The Farsight and his team put the seismic fibrillators and have to defend them for a while. And Epistolary, whatever his name is, I forgot, the Psyker of the Skylords comes down and brings the command squad and fights Farsight and his guys. And they almost win, actually. They're really close to winning. It's a nice little showing because sometimes the power scaling of Space Marines is so, like, inconsistent between authors. And previously we kind of saw Battlesuits wrecking house when it came to Space Marines, but now that the command squad is here, they're kind of kicking butt, and they're pushing back Farsight and his buddies. And Farsight 1v1s this Psyker, and the Psyker becomes, I don't know, like air, like water, basically, and all of Farsight's attacks are just passing through him and stuff. While this is happening, though, poor Malcor is delivered. He works with poor Malcor as well, so again, this Vashia stuff, he's working with the Water Cast, and he's working with Ovesa, the Earth Cast, to get this done. Poor Malcor just kind of, they sneak in to a broadcasting station basically, and he causes an uprising with his blunt truths towards the workers. They have an uprising going on, which is helping them a lot now because that was the original plan. And he's fighting this Psyker. He eventually kind of wins, and he like pushes him into the lava. But the Psyker has this epic moment where he like emerges from the flames as this big giant flame avatar, and he's like the Emperor's angel and yada yada. But then Nicola, the Psyker, and poor Malcor with some, again, sus magic kind of neutralize him. And the day is eventually won when the seismic fibrillators go off and the entire world erupts in magma and, like, doomsday, basically. And obviously all of the humans that they got to get into an uprising are instantly killed, but, like, they don't care. The Tau don't actually care. You can join the Tau if you want, but
don't help the Xenos.
Yeah. You join the greater good, bro. You definitely are not going to be castrated and enslaved and put on the front lines. Definitely not.
And the thing you can tell
because the guard doesn't do that.
No.
Yeah, sure they do.
This whole episode. Okay, go ahead, Andy. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can tell that the Scarlords weren't going to win, though, because when you look at their wiki page, they don't have, like, any designs. So you're like, oh, yeah, where this is going.
You're a filler chapter.
Yeah, I was going to say, this whole episode, though, is basically, like, dunking on Andy's favourite, and then suddenly being like, actually, we're just as bad. It's like, oh, God.
Oh, Lord. It's big. It's like they're chipping away at, like, a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a millionth of the Imperium war effort. So it's all right. It's fine. They killed a chapter with no logos. I don't care. Send the White Scars.
Yeah.
This
The
video is Eli giving lore, and then me and Andy taking pot shots over Zoom with each other.
yeah, the tower, unfortunately, because they fight off the Space Marines, like, oh, we did so great, we fought off the Imperium, but like the reality is they fought one chapter, and out of like thousands of Space Marine chapters, yeah.
Is it true that the first Space Marine that they ever saw they fought was the Emperor?
I don't know.
Or the Tau,
I think it was the first. I think the first chapter master they killed.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, we killed the Emperor, and then nah, you didn't. Goofy Tau. I'm a Tau fan. Not gonna lie, but only kind of, only kind of. Yeah, you like them, and then you read their books, and they're just so arrogant. Like the Eldar at least have some base to be arrogant. Like they can kind of
an actual empire, like the Tau
Tau
Empire.
just
Like,
think they're great.
That's cute.
But they can't see the bigger picture.
I can't believe Andy is saying that about
That
the
was
Eldar.
holy
Yeah.
shit.
Wow.
So some got past the internal censors.
People in
there.
the chat need to remember this day.
So the chapter master of the Scar Lords sees that his command squad died, which is actually, it feels bad, kind of, because they're cool. And he decides to order Exterminatus. Classic. Because, I mean, to be fair, the planet is useless now to them, and the tower is going to take it back. So he decides to order Exterminatus. Somehow Farsight sees this plan already happening, and he sends Oblatai, who, mind you, Oblatai is now an AI. He's not actually, I didn't say that before, he's an AI. He's the perfect replica of the old Oblatai who taught Farsight. And the old Oblatai died in an experiment where Ovesa tried to, like, resurrect an orc, basically. And this experiment went a little bit wrong, and the orc broke his shackles and killed Oblatai. So again, a little bit of clashing between Ovesa and Farsight. They have little arguments about that, actually. But Oblatai gets sent up in this, like, one-man ship, and he shoots the Exterminatus warheads before they can get far enough, and he destroys the Scarlord's fleet, or at least their ship. And I'm pretty sure that's the end of the Scarlords, to my knowledge. I'm not sure if they're still alive today, but I'm pretty sure they're all dead. Luckily for Oblatai,
who cares?
yeah. Luckily for Oblatai, he's able to upload his consciousness to another thing and becomes the next incarnation of Oblatai, which is like, I think, Oblatai 4-0. Nowadays, it's Oblatai 9-0, so it happens quite a lot. But I mean, like, it makes sense. If you can just sacrifice yourself over and over again, you might as well. So that's Viorlas. They've taken Viorlas, and it doesn't really explain the taking of the other Sept worlds. I'm not sure if there was much of an Imperial presence on them or not, because they just kind of take them, and that's it. So I guess there wasn't. But there's like 4 main Sept worlds that they take, and they're pretty neat. There's Celestia, Tenekla, Lubgrau, and then of course Viorlas. I think Hal had a favorite too, if you wanted to talk about them now, Hal, or you can wait till later.
I picked 2 that would definitely up my end, shall we say. I'll start with the Tenekla, if I'm saying it right. So this one is probably my favorite because this is a crystal world. And the idea of that is, like, Warhammer worlds are usually, like, it's either, like, dirty, like, grim, you know, it's just basically mud and brick most of the time. But this is kind of, like, this hits, like, a new level of sci-fi. It's kind of a bit more like, does anyone here play Stellaris? It's like a bit more like that vibe, shall we say.
I love Paradox's war crime simulators. I'm a big fan of almost all the ones they put out.
Well, luckily, you'll be right up there on this one. It's a little bit weird, this one, where, like, they're different casts. They live in, like, different places. So the air casts are in, like, floating pods that, like, are kind of above the planet. And then there's... apparently the planet's, like, also, like, transparent, which is, like, really bizarre to me. Like, I don't quite... could you imagine an entire planet?
See through.
Like, it's like, you know, when, like, you're a younger, like, you look over, like, if you ever showed, like, a room with your sibling, and your sibling's, like, just giving you the middle finger, like, across the room or something. Like, someone could do that through an entire planet. And, like, the Earth cast themselves, like, they've stripped the planet of, like, any, like, you know, things that get out of the way. So it's kind of... the whole planet's basically a geometrically, like, perfect surface. So
yeah, dude, they turned into, like, perfect hexagons the whole planet around. It's really cool. It's
pretty out there, to be fair. And my other favorite one was I'm not going to pronounce this right. Salashihei, which is basically. So is it Salashihei or
Celeste.
Salashe?
This is how they say it in the book. I just assume that's how.
Sounds like a something you put on, like a packet or something you pour on your meal.
I don't know. I thought it sounded like you would go to like an Irish pub and they have a cocktail and it's like, you want to sell a shay? Yeah, that would be good.
Yes. Well, this planet's again weird because it's basically it describes it as like a collection of giant moon-sized globes of liquid that orbit a sun, which obviously is mental, isn't it? It's insane. And apparently, like, it states like when like meteors like pass into one of them, like basically it breaks up a little bit, essentially. So I don't even know how it even. It's basically just a massive.
It's my sci-fi universe. I get to decide the physics.
I mean, there are massive blobs of. Like, I think they've seen massive blobs of water in space. Like, it can happen.
I believe it. Yeah.
But why? What's the point? That's what I think.
It's a natural phenomenon. It just happens sometimes.
I thought they built it. I was like,
ugh. And they needed a reason to say that this is the water caste planet.
Basically, yeah. So the water cast kind of just this is their home. A bit on the nose, but to be fair, we're into Warhammer, so a bit on the nose is kind of our thing.
I like the Firecast just being like, and this is our Firecast planet, and then the Salamander's going, cute. Look at our planet. This is the real fire planet.
Oh,
Hell, since you brought it up, oh, sorry, were you finished? I didn't mean to
I'm finished. I'm finished. Go ahead.
Since you brought it up, I have to ask: do you have a favorite Stellaris war crime?
Oh, this is tricky.
My personal favorite is the guy who went to war with an empire, captured some of their planets, turned the species on the planets he captured into food, and then sold that food back to the empire he conquered it from.
Yikes.
That's awesome.
I'm kind of more of the, like, the world, like the disaster events. The one where, like, you kind of, you meet the planet and it's full of, like, it literally is like lizard men that are tiny and they're, like, they're basically very primitive, but then if you let them onto your ship or whatever by accident, then they're like yeah. I mean, they're
monsters.
They're so aggressive and, like, tiny. My war crime is not that. My war crime list is not heavy, though.
That's a shame. You're not a true Paradox player.
Oh, I do, but my Crusader Kings, let's just say incest is Wincest in Crusader Kings 3.
Oh, no.
That's like the way to play the game. It always ends up that way.
I may like the Xenos in 40k, but in Stellaris, there is no war crime. They're too heinous. Too heinous not to justify in some way.
You would make the Imperium blush.
I make the Imperium look like rookies in the field of alien murder.
Someone made a mod for it, didn't they? Years ago. If
the primitives didn't want to be annihilated, they wouldn't have been born on a planet that had rare resources on it.
Oh, true.
Lord. But yeah, those are like my kind of, they're kind of the best ones, to be honest. Like, basically Crystal Planet, Liquid Planet.
Not so fancy.
Yeah.
Vuros is just the jungle volcano place. And the other one, Lubgrau, I think, is the Earth planet. Like, that's it. There's ravines and it's desert. The Earth gods like it because it's good for testing weapons and, bombing random locations because there's nothing to bomb. It's just dirt. Good old Earth cat stuff. Those are the main planets. There's more, but I don't think they're really mentioned much, at least. We see a new player enter the game now, and this is War Boss Grog Iron Tooth of, I don't remember what clan he's part of. He's just a freebooter, I believe. Him and his boys, I guess I should say, fought on Arkanasha. Also, the orcs call Farsight the Red Runt, which is nice, and they call the Tau gun runts, which is fun. Boss Irontooth and his buddies are parlay with Captain Badrook, and they hire his services to try to battle with the Tau in the War of Dakka, because their dream is to out-Dakka the Tau and beat them at their own game. Because the orcs, they freaking hate the Tau. The Tau are like the worst opponents ever. They just shoot at you, and it's like so lame. But they have some skirmishes in space, and Farsight actually accompanies Li Mao Tang, his pilot, on the Fancy Manta on a bit of a scouting mission to go check out the orcs. And they have a bit of a tassel. Things go kind of badly, and there's an issue. But we see Farsight try to save Tang's young pupil, whose name I can't remember for the life of me. And there's kind of like a other aircast girl there, and she's just like this normie who doesn't really get it.
This
yet.
normie.
Don't be Tau.
Like Li Mao Tang and the other guy and Farsight are all talking, and she keeps being like, "What? That's crazy. That's fascia," or like, "You can't say that about that," and blah blah blah. And Tang over the like in secret over the little comms feed. When they're talking about the ethereals, he tells Farsight is basically says, I have some opinions about our glorious leaders myself, which he shouldn't have said over the comms feed because they're always listening. Another thing, I guess, Oblatai made this frequency that emits kind of like this wacky white noise that disrupts all the recording devices around, and he turns it on whenever they talk about things that the ethereals wouldn't like. So that's kind of how Farsight gets around saying things he's not supposed to, but he can't use it very often, and they actually do take it away from him eventually because I think they find out that's what he's using. But the ship has some damage to it from the Orc asteroid, and Farsight risks his life to save Tang's pupil by like cutting him out of his chair. And like the one lady on there is like, "You have to go. You're too important. You know, you're the head of the expedition. You can't die here." And Farsight says, "No, I'm gonna save him," even though in the back of his head he knows he has to save him. She points her gun at him. That's like to the point of how important she sees it. But whatever. Farsight then takes this Cold Star battlesuit and 1v1s an entire ship again. Not gonna lie, I was having a hard time paying attention in the like 5 minutes that this happened in the book, so I don't know all the details, but it happened. He 1v1s the ship again. And that's the important part of that. The orcs, he then goes back to the ethereals, and the ethereals tell him that the orcs are going to this planet called Atari-Vo, which is another planet, and they say, "You can't go. You have to stay here and make sure that the separate world, like the main separate worlds, are defended." And in another unspeakable act of treason, Farsight decides to not listen to this and go to Atari-Vo to help them. And multiple times, whenever he disobeys and does something he's not supposed to, and like Brightsword is like, "Bro, you can't do that," and Farsight's like, "Yeah, I can," and it's too important, so the Watercast will just make something up and make it look like it was supposed to happen, so I can get away with whatever I want. And he's right. He knows how to play the system. Brightsword is his main pupil. I should say he's a part of a cloning program, a classified cloning program, because he keeps dying because he's very headstrong and goofy. But they have him, on call to be cloned. And he talks really weirdly. He gives everyone a nickname. It's hard. I don't know how to describe it. Like, whenever he talks to Farsight, depending on what is happening, he'll say, like, I don't know, "Greetings, bold one," or like when he's missing an arm on Arthas Moloch, he calls him "armless one." Or if he's talking to me or Colin, he'd say "balding one." And
Balding one. Target the hairline, his true weakness.
All ships fire at will. Burn that receding hairline.
Yeah, Farsight basically tells him everything. He's very close with him and Bravestorm and Oblatai. The other members of the Eight are kind of like newer to the setting, which we see with Shazo Arakan, who comes into the play. And Farsight leaves Arakan to watch over the Sept worlds that he's about to leave, and he heads out to Atari-Vo, and it's an absolute horrible disaster. So first, the orcs land and blow up this city with their big asteroid, and they don't know about it soon enough, so the ethereals command a retreat, and they have everyone of like, I think it's like Vray ranking or higher, so it's like pretty high ranking, so millions of people are going to die. Only those ranks get to evacuate, the rest are like, they just leave there because they don't have time. So all those people die. Oh well, I guess ethereals don't care. It was really cool in the book though, because they had a poor connection on the feed, so they actually recorded and used sound effects to make it like a cutting out comms feed. They actually had a few parts in the book where it's kind of like an audio drama, so it's worth to listen to if you have Audible or whatever. Please
I
sponsor
like
us,
those.
Audible. Please sponsor us.
Please.
Like there are a few of those where they've like I've done the Horus Heresy series when there's no stuff like that, but some of the collections, like they did one with the Knights Errant, and they had like sound effects, and there's a bit where Loken and Luthor are having a conversation. There's like it's in a dungeon. There's like water dripping and noises of like cell doors. It's really cool what they do with those, but they're kind of rare. I find.
Yeah, the Farsight book starts out with with a Tau propaganda commercial, and it has sound effects and stuff. It's really cool. Yeah. So they
It's
go
like
to
the idea of them going, "I'm doing my part" at the beginning. You're like,
Yeah.
good reference.
Basically. I might be committing a war crime by saying that the planet's called Atarivo. Atarivo might be the city. I don't remember. I don't think it's a big deal though. Farsight shows up, and they have a quarantine going for this big asteroid that ran into the planet to keep the orcs out, but they don't want to engage with them, so that they'll just result in infighting or whatever. And Farsight doesn't want this because he's used to the orcs of Arkanasha, he doesn't want them to kill everyone and spread like the orcs do. And he has a lot of PTSD from Arkanasha, and he really just he does not want to lose to the orcs again. So he launches his big Motkos strike. Unfortunately, these are the cunningly brutal orcs, not the brutally cunning orcs. Big mistake, Farsight. So Captain Badrock and Grog hatch this trap on Farsight and his guys, and they wait until Farsight and his hunter cadre are in range of their asteroid thing, and they activate the force field and essentially like trap them and kill them all. And they have a lot of flash kits with them, so there's tons of Dakka, so they're just like obliterating these poor Tau. And in the end, only Farsight and his like commanders escape basically, and there's huge casualties. It's like this huge shame on Farsight's record, and it's very, very bad. And he's put to shame as well because he disobeyed the ethereals, and then he lost as well. But yeah, it's one of the first times that we actually see Farsight lose, which is nice because you don't see characters lose a lot in Warhammer novels. I feel like
True,
they just
yeah.
win all the time. He is a genius, but he has not. It's another example of the Tau not encountering something before, so they had no idea it was going to happen. He didn't know that orcs could be smart. They're actually about to kill the leaders of the orcs, Badrock and Grog and whoever, but then they just mysteriously teleport away. I wonder where they're going. And Farsight returns to the Enclave worlds. Atarivo was too far away for messages to get through because they don't have astropaths. Lol. They don't have astropaths, so they don't know what's going on the other side of the Gulf. It takes a long time to cross the Gulf as well because they don't have warp travel like the orcs, which they don't know that the orcs have warp travel. And the orc fleet used their capabilities to cross the Gulf and go to the other Sept worlds while Farsight and his lads are busy on Atarivo. And Farsight returns to utter horrible disaster, and the orcs have invaded all the Sept worlds. And it's absolutely terrible. Everything he has fought for, they're about to lose, and they're losing the battle on every planet. So Farsight relents command for a while to Shavastos, which we meet Shavastos, and he's hanging in this like stasis thing in Ovace's workshop, basically, and his head is carved open, and his brain is just out, and it's like held in different pieces. And Ovace like presses a button and wakes him up, and he talks to him, but he's also talking to Pure Tide because he has the engram chip in him, remember? So he kind of like goes in and out of lucidity. So he leaves command with Shavastos, who's technically not supposed to be alive, so he just has him like pretend to be someone else and stay in a battlesuit. And he goes and he meditates on the bottom of the ocean in Viorlas, I believe, and he thinks for a while. And then he says, you know what? I know what to do. I'm going to go, I don't know, be one with the elements. So he goes into like volcanoes and burning forests on Viorlas, and he thinks for a while. And then he goes to the bottom of the ocean again, and he thinks for Celestia, and he goes way high up in the air for Tinekla, and I don't remember what he does for the Earth one. Just some earthy thing. He meditates. He has a little avatar. He has a little avatar, the last Airbender moment, and he has just like this random spark
Revelation.
Revelation. That's good. Yeah. So he knows what to do because of this, I guess. It's very another Vashia moment, kind of proving the ethereals wrong in that being between castes, between spheres, might not be such a bad thing. Because maybe we should let the little Firecast babies play with Lego, and they'll learn a couple skills. So he goes to Celestia. This is not an order, by the way. I don't remember the specific order, but he goes to Celestia. He hatches a plan with Ovesa, and he gets these seismic defibrillators, which is he uses like all the time, I guess. They're just magic. But he drops them at the bottom of the ocean. They make this like special battle suit casing for him so that he can go to the bottom of the ocean without exploding and being crushed by pressure. And he causes... There's actually an orc submarine captain character for a little bit, just for like a chapter. But he hears this like thrum on the bottom of the ocean, and he's like, what the heck is that? And it's a little off-putting. And then they turn around, and there's these giant tsunamis coming, and the tsunamis engulf all the orc war fleets on Salash Hay. And they're done with. Then he goes to Tau Enclave. He has the aircast bait in the orc air fleet, and then they kind of fly up, leaving all the propellant gases. And Farsight ignites the propellants with his plasma rifle, and the aircast like rides it out on top, I guess, and it incinerates all the orc flyers. And then he goes to Viorlas, and he causes a bunch of firestorms, and he actually kills Grog on Viorlas. I guess Viorlas is the last one. He also causes a mass Talarissa bond on Viorlas, which is the big thing for his Farsight enclaves. On the tabletop, back in the day at least, you would have to take the bonding knife upgrade for 1 point per guy, because all of Farsight's warriors have bonding knives because they went through the Talarissa bond. It's very morale boosting and whatnot. And then they fight off the orcs from Viorlas, and lastly, he goes to Labgrau, and he megalifts all the Tau colonies into the air, I guess. And using fibrillators again, he has all the chasms and whatever cave in on the orcs and kill all the speed freaks who were chilling there. Yeah, and he wins! Hooray!
This is like in one montage. Holy crap!
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like you could make a montage out of that. It's like he goes here and he's just like...
it was basically a montage in the book, yeah.
And
It was all in one chapter, I'm pretty sure that he did this.
I need Jack Black just screaming in the background with like a heavy guitar riff.
Yeah.
And then Matt, he sounds so badass. Like, I'll be honest. It's like I have one.
Smart fellow. He's a smart fella, not a fart smeller. That's for sure.
What?
The Farsight enclaves.
Oh no, heresy! Got to throw it all away now.
This Grog dying was kind of a feels bad. The orc had the head of the old boss on his shoulder. It was like a pain boss or whatever, and this head would just like scream stuff all the time. He was just head on a jar, and it was fun, but they're all dead now. Rip. So he masters the elements. Woo. The other orcs went to Arthas Moloch though, which was just this old relic world, and I don't quite remember why. It was part of the trap still that they sent them there. The trap failed, obviously, in the end. It almost worked, so the orcs almost outsmarted Farsight, which is kind of embarrassing, I guess. But
Man.
Mork gets you sometimes.
Orcs are stupid until one of them learns how to count to 5, and then you're in trouble.
Truly. So he wants to get rid of the last of the orcs, which are on Arthas Moloch. And the ethereals keep saying, "Oh, why haven't you?" They're like a nagging. Actually, I don't know what I can say on this.
Nagging.
They nag a lot. They're like, "Oh, Farsight, there's still Imperial presence on Arthas Moloch, and there's still Imperial presence on this one little planet. That doesn't matter. Why would you save all these people?
They're Karens.
And not the Imperials first." Yeah.
Ethereals are
Like
Karens.
mother-in-laws.
Yeah.
Why don't you get a job?
Yeah.
Stacy's husband is a chief executive officer. You just have a dumb sword.
Yeah, basically. So they nag Farsight a little bit more, but he still goes to Arthas Moloch. Oh, and this is where things get a little spicy for our big man, and it's the most important part in his story, arguably. Sorry that we took so long to get there. I just wanted to showcase how epic he is. He goes to Arthas Moloch with the plan of just fighting orcs, because there's nothing else on Arthas Moloch. There's no such thing as ghosts, obviously. His friend Shazera talks about ghosts a lot, though, but him and Case think it's goofy. He goes to Moloch. They're fighting the orcs. It's like basically a free win, because there's not that many orcs on there, because the orcs didn't really care about going to some dumb relic world. They spill blood on this dais, whatever. And all of a sudden, this wacky glowing circle appears, and it starts raining blood, like the Slayer song. And alright. It's a pretty metal moment, actually. And this blood starts congealing into these red-horned aliens, corn demons, obviously, but they don't know that. And so they call them Molochites at first, and they're fighting them off. They don't know what the heck is going on, because, like, where the heck did these things come from? They can't be negotiated with. They're not, like, they're crazy. They don't have any guns.
They find themselves in a mosh pit.
Yeah. And so the demons start killing the Tau and the orcs. Farsight is, like, ordering a systematic retreat. It's going, like, okay, until Farsight puts his gun in one of their faces and pulls the trigger, and nothing happens. Because they're demons, and it's basically random chance if you get to kill them or not with your guns. And Farsight gets critically injured and is kind of spirited away back to the fleet. But before this, I messed up a little bit here. The reason he goes unconscious is because he looks into the portal, and he sees many, many visions. The most important things that he sees, though, is his visions of these giant, like, glowing white beings, and they all are looking down on these countless, like, millions of Tau who are all grinning so hard that their mouths are bleeding, and all these Tau are chained up in slavery, but they're, like, willingly doing it all. And whenever one dies, there's, like, this Uruk-hai birth scene where this amniotic sac gets opened with a new Tau in it, and it grows up really fast, and it clamps itself into the chains and enslaves itself willingly. So he sees that, and then he kind of sees himself as a warrior king, and he's, like, throttling both Case and Shasera and killing them. And he has these, like, this bone armor on and these bone helmets, and he sees just, like, chaos visions, and he looks into the warp almost and sees the realm of Khorne, and then he goes unconscious.
I'd love to see him try and take on Case. The Doom soundtrack would have started hammering away.
I just like how you were like, oh, he's wearing, like, the red armor, and I'm just like, Khorne just looks at it and he's like, that's a nice shade of red. I'm a big fan of red myself.
Yeah. I guess, actually, I left out a pretty important part. The beginning of the second Farsight book talks about literally how Tzeentch and Khorne are competing for Farsight, basically. And on Arthas Moloch, both Tzeentch and Khorne demons appear, making it seem that almost maybe they're working together in, like, loose allied to just get Farsight on the side of chaos, or corrupt him, at the very least. Because for Tzeentch, he causes a lot of change with his rebellion, which tears, like, a whole empire apart. And, you know, Khorne's pretty obvious. He kills people. But Farsight goes unconscious after seeing these visions and a few other things, and wakes up in the Luke Skywalker Star Wars back to tank. And he says, let me go. And the Earthcast says, the ethereals say you're not allowed to go. And then he, like, convinces them otherwise, or whatever, and he leaves. And he meets up with his commanders, and finds out that the ethereals made them all leave the planet, and there's, like, random hunter cadres scattered down on Arthas Moloch getting killed. And so he has this bit of an argument with the ethereals, because the ethereals, he's going to go back no matter what, even in his critical condition. And the ethereals kind of argue with him. I left another thing out. Sorry. Before this stuff happens, in the end of the first time they fight on Viorlas, he encounters poor Malcor trying to kill Nicola Harat, the Psyker lady. And poor Malcor is finally revealed to be the demon-possessed Tau. He was possessed by a herald of Tzeentch. And Farsight has this flash of inspiration and carves his hexagrammaton into poor Malcor's flesh and banishes a demon. He somehow knew that symbol could banish demons. And poor Malcor, like, tells him, before dying though, the demon tells him that, like, the ethereals are playing him for a fool. And Farsight knows that he's never heard this demon lie. He, like, tells himself that it's lying, but he knows deep down that it's telling him the truth. This demon then doesn't really get banished, but it possesses Nicola Harat. And Nicola kind of coaxes Farsight going down to the planet again. The ethereals go down to the planet with Farsight because they think that they can negotiate with the demons, goofy Tau, and they use the word nemesis, which Farsight then thinks about later, because he thought that they didn't know what they were, and how could the Tau race have a nemesis that they've never even seen or heard of before? Pretty sketchy. So, more demons come out of the portal, and now there's a lot of change, and there's bloodthirsters, and everything's going wrong, and all three of the ethereals die, and Moada dies trying to defend the ethereals, and Farsight almost dies, and then he picks up this big fancy sword from a statue beside him, because his fusion blaster arm got torn off, so he just has his plasma gun arm, but his plasma gun got destroyed as well. And he goes up to deflect the bloodthirster's axe, and the axe shatters on this sword that is just really OP for some reason. I mean, we're at the sword. If you'd like to talk about the sword, you can talk about the sword.
Yeah. So this is obviously everyone here has seen the new Farsight model. This probably dates this, but
Pretty beautiful.
this is not just any blade. This is the Dawn blade. There's a lot of Dawn. I realised in a lot of the Tau naming things. Man, they're already they're like morning people maybe. But the Dawn blade itself is essentially Farsight's his iconic weapon, and it's kind of its design is not like relates to anything that's really in the Warhammer setting. It's supposedly of like a way like pre-human Xenos civilization. Like its design is unique. No one else has anything really like it, and this thing just cuts. This thing can cut through pretty much, like even it shatters like the demon's like axe basically. Essentially, this thing is. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit OP, but it's supposedly like I think it even states like it's forged from a chronophagic alloys, which I think
it's a made up word.
yeah, it's Warhammer, but supposedly this its unique ability, which I don't think Farsight's really aware of it, but we know is like kind of maybe the reader, but this can like absorb life force from Farsight's enemies. So, I mean, to be fair, if he found out about that, he'd probably feel guilty, but also he wouldn't put it down. To be fair, it's like it's too good. And this blade again is ginormous. By this thing is huge. It's like literally like carrying a person like by the feet and like two-handed whacking them violently. But this is kind of this is the genesis of where he gets that unique weapon. He just sort of finds it. Obviously, maybe it's a plot from some intervening gods, shall we say. But yeah, he obviously on Arthas Moloch now, this is his iconic weapon. I'll pass it back to Eli to state how how that goes for him in this battle.
It's also a sword of all.
Ooh.
Well, no, all I'm saying is people finding swords in Warhammer 40k is usually a bad thing.
Yeah, he actually, there is a little bit I have in my notes that he starts getting some little sus Fulgrim thoughts, where I think at one point when he's fighting, it might be in the new lore actually, I don't remember, but whatever. Someone's fighting, and someone like wins a battle, and he has this like spike of anger where he's like, I should have been in that battle. I should be I should win that battle. I want to kill those things. Kind of little moment. It doesn't really go on past that though, so it's not. I don't think it's a complete Fulgrim situation.
It's more like Jendor Scrivok, the Night Lord. He's like, I've got this sword and I keep chucking it away and it comes back somehow. And it's like, it won't leave me alone, but it's really cool.
If I remember correctly, when he looks at the sword, he can see his own reflection through the battlesuit, which is really cool. And the Earthcast has no idea what the heck this wacky sword is. But yeah, it's the Dawn Blade. He fights the Bloodthirster with it. He almost wins, actually, but he's about to die. The entire time, Coldstar is yelling at him that he's about to have a cardiac failure. He's going to have a heart attack and die. Luckily, Bravestorm and Brightsword come in at the last moment and save Farsight after he kind of battles with this demon for quite a while. And Farsight gets up. He goes and kills some orcs. And all of a sudden, he feels really good. He feels a lot better. He's not, his heart attack is gone. And things are going well. So he kind of commandeers this counterattack and things start going well. He also spots an amulet with the same symbol of the hexagrammaton. And he notices that the demons are not going towards these amulets. So he has all of his cadres, or whatever, all of the squads gather these amulets from the statues on Arthas Moloch in their area, in the city that they're in. And he takes them all, and he goes and flings them into the portal, and the portal explodes, and all the demons are gone, and everything's better. Hooray! So, that's the good ending for Arthas Moloch. They then clean up the orcs. Nicola Harat was possessed by the demon. She actually shape changes herself to look like poor Malcor, so that she can fit into Oblatai's command suite, like his little harness place, which is kind of like Bravestorm and Brightsword are not huge fans of this, but they wanted her to be down there because she seemed to know what was going on. She fights a Hound of Corn, and she puts the collar on to get the Demon of Zeech out of her. Yeah. And it's like it's very agonizing and brutal for her, but she does it, and it works out good for her. And she survives, surprisingly. She talks with the Lord of Change, though, before that thing goes away. So they win on Arthas Moloch. And Farsight goes back to the ship. And mind you, at this point, Farsight was well beyond the natural lifespan of a Tau. They were already used longevity surgeries and stuff and treatments to keep him alive, but he's an old guy at this point. He's very, 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 very old. Probably the oldest Tau alive at this point.
He's the Clint Eastwood of the Tau Society.
He just won't go.
Like, get off my lawn.
Yeah. He comes back, and they discover that he looks like he's like in his prime years again. He doesn't look young anymore. He's still the same on the inside. He looks in a mirror, and he has like a Bilbo Baggins moment where he's like, I feel so stretched like butter on bread. And he doesn't say that specifically, obviously, but
That would have been kind of weird.
he feels old, but when he looks himself in the reflection, he looks young. And when he's fighting with the Dawnblade and killing things, he feels really good. And that goes away after he's fighting things, obviously. And yeah, he has no idea that the Dawnblade is what's extending his lifespan. But it's said that if he were to ever find out, he would probably kill himself, apparently. That's just a theory that they say, but that's like official lore theory, I guess. I think some people think the Dawnblade has Necron background. It's not confirmed, though, last I checked, so I'd like to think it was something like before that even. Would be cool. I guess Necron's at the beginning. Doesn't matter. So yeah, they find that out, and then Ovesa wants to study it, and Farsight's like, again, Bilbo Baggins. Why should I give it to you? It's mine, my own, mine. And he doesn't let Ovesa have it, because it's his. But he decides that that's enough fighting for him. He's caused the death of 3 ethereals, and that basically means, like, he expects to be fully exiled for this and killed. And he has to go through like this trial thing, but he doesn't. None of that actually happens. He does go into exile though for a time, because having 3 ethereals die under your command is like the most ultimate horrible failure ever. Even though he's found out the truth of these ethereals, and now that he knows the truth of the ethereals, unlike Horus, he doesn't want to spark an entire huge rebellion, because he still believes in the Tau Va. He still wants the greater good to flourish and the Tau race to do well. So instead of sticking around and telling someone, he tells no one, and he goes into exile. And he waits to die, basically, just living, hunting, and chilling in the Viorlan, like, wastelands and whatever. And then he doesn't die, and he just keeps living. And so he comes back. All right, I've already talked about them a little too much, and I stole some of Hal's stuff, but I'm going to let him talk about his favorite characters in the 8 now.
Yes, these are kind of like the Fellowship of the Ring in a way. I hate to say it, but I had to get that reference in there because I do.
It's the Tau saying potatoes.
Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. We all know that's from. Sorry, what was the? I said war crime. What was the lore crime you did, Andy, with that?
Shrek.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
I made a small mistake. That's all. I knew
That is not a small mistake.
They were both talking about food and their fantasy. It's related.
That was egregious. Not as egregious as some of these names that we're going to go through here. So I picked 2 of my favorites to go with. So Eli has mentioned them a couple of times. I think just a few of them. But the ones I'd chosen was... sorry for the pronunciation, boys. This is going to be atrocious. But it's Ob Lotai 9-0. And this one's a pretty unique kind of member of the 8, because... he is one of Farsight's honor guard, and he is in a broadside battlesuit, but there's no one in it. There's absolutely no one in it. This thing is empty, kind of like the jokes on this channel. And this one, I know.
I'm hilarious.
True. This one is a AI engram of the original owner, which was actually the original Ob Lotai. So this is essentially just a robot. And obviously, any Imperium boys out there know this would be very heretical, pretty terrible. But I think that one's pretty cool, to be fair, because it's kind of like the member that doesn't really fail you. So he's pretty good old reliable. The other one I chose was also Torchstar. Not gonna lie, entirely based on the name, because Torchstar just sounds pretty cool. This one is considered like the youngest member of the kind of crew. I want to say Fellowship of the Ring, but it's really they're not going to any Mordor in this lore, unfortunately, though. But this one was actually a Tau defector. He's also known as I might sorry for the names, so sorry people, but Viorlan, I think, who is kind of in obviously like most Tau names are related to like their jobs or like what they've achieved, and I think it was something to do related. I'm flubbing all my words here. It's related to how she would emulate hundreds. So take that as you will, because obviously Torchstar, tortures people, torches as in like actual torch. Sorry, YouTube, don't get angry at me. Burned, and apparently she has like fire tattoos across her body, which is obviously that's pretty cool. And I'll pass it over to Eli quickly too.
You're forgetting the most important aspect, Hal.
I'll go for it.
She's a female Tau, which means you look up her name, and the first
no,
and the first image will be canon art, and then immediately after that,
Rule
Tau
34.
tits as far as the eye can
It's
see.
even worse because there is no canon art of other than like one little picture.
I looked it up. There's a picture of her battle suit, and then it immediately goes to tits.
Thanks, Warhammer fans. Thanks. At least she has cool tattoos, though, to be fair. And I'll pass over to Eli to fill out the rest of this elite fellowship.
I mean, I did mention them mostly already. There's not much more to say, but I mean, it is interesting to say that Torchstar, to my knowledge at least, he arrived in an Orca dropship that was owned by Aunshi. So not all the ethereals hate Farsight. Aunshi seems to be on his side, who's an ethereal from Viorlas. He's a G. Anywho, Shavastos is the Dreadnought guy. We talked about him a little bit. He has the big power fist. He destroys a Titan at one point. In the new lore, he fights off a Tyrannid Titan with his big fist. So he does a lot of fisting, you could say.
God, he's like carrying the entire setting, isn't he, at this point then?
Apparently. There's not much more to say about the rest, if I'm being honest. Archon is just a commander guy who's really smart. Shavastos is the guy with the pure tide engram chip in his brain. Bravestorm is the Dreadnought guy. Brightsword is the cloned guy. Yeah, we talked about them. They don't have as much lore as you'd want, but I mean, there's 8 characters that they have to like slush into books, so you can't be that picky, I guess. Ovasa's the main scientist. He gets a Riptide battlesuit, which we'll talk about shortly here for the lore.
They have very like anime side character energy.
Yeah,
where like
extremely so.
If they develop these characters, how will they have the time to write more Cato Sicarius books?
Yeah, truly.
I, Cato Sicarius, am just not a side character.
He's the main character of 40k, don't you know?
True. I feel like we need like the TTS boys just to come in here to scream just for.
Hey,
like,
Cato Sicarius!
Oh my god, I hated that. Oh.
Yeah, you didn't know my voice could go that high, did you?
No, was that you? Christ.
I think I did forget to mention a while ago that the Ethereals killed Farsight's pilot, Li Montang, who was just like this old, nice guy. When he said that he had some criticisms for them, they never got to talk about it in the future because they showed Farsight some poorly photoshopped footage of his Manta being struck by a missile, but the missile like curves randomly and goes into the ship and then explodes like 5 seconds later. So they like
That reminds me of? It just made me think of that episode of South Park where it's like Japan and it's the bit was just like see, and it's the bombers with like the dolphins and the whales and the pilot seats. I don't know why I thought about that.
Oh man.
You'd think with Tau technology they could make better fake death videos, but I guess not.
Who's the like Warhammer equivalent of Cartman?
If
that should even be said,
no.
if that should even be said in a sentence, that's pretty cursed.
Can I have a confession?
You've never watched South Park, have you?
I don't watch South Park.
I've never either.
Bro, we're on the other side of the Atlantic and we've seen it.
The Simpsons is a much better show than South Park.
I don't
Or
watch
at least it was until it started eating shit.
It used to be, and then it wasn't.
And then after the Simpsons movie, everything went downhill.
I remember.
I didn't.
It's a little South Park reference there, but no.
Sorry, I don't watch South Park either, so I didn't get it.
Remember berries.
Oh god, we should probably we're here for Farsight. If it's not, we'll switch.
Our viewers are 2 hours in, and we're talking about South Park and Simpsons.
Becoming a
So
South Park
Farsight
channel.
went into exile, which is where we left off, I believe. And then he didn't die because he had the Dawnblade, and so he lived forever. He left the Dawnblade in his battlesuit back behind in Ovesa's workshop type place, but he left its shield generator on as a symbol to like not touch it. It's mine. He saw the signs of a Tyrannid invasion starting though on his planet. I don't think he really knew it was Tyranids at the
Just a
time.
guy being nibbled by a really small one like that doesn't look good.
Well, like the floor and stuff was exploding and doing all the weird alien stuff that happens to planets when Tyranids show up. And so Farsight returns in his people's time of dire need. And they do the DNA tests and whatever, and they're all hyped that Farsight's back, and he's somehow like 200 years old. I don't know if he's that old by that point because his 8 are also still alive. I don't know how half of them stay alive because they're not dreadnoughts or AI, but just let it happen, I guess.
These are the only characters anyone cares about.
Yeah, that's how.
Ovesa, it said that he just takes drugs and it keeps him alive.
Chad.
Yeah. So that works. But the High Fleet invades Viorlas. Not Viorla, his home planet, Viorlas, the other one. I couldn't find which High Fleet it actually was. So just Tyranids, just antics. But the Tyranids invade the planets, and everything's going badly because it's a Tyrannid invasion, obviously. Farsight's mounting the best defenses that he can, and he's killing them pretty well, but he's finding that his Mont-Cost strategy of eliminating leader beasts doesn't, it's not really doing the job because they just make more leaders and big monsters, and they send them back down. So everyone's dying, and everything's going very bad. And kind of as a last-ditch effort, he plans a Kauyan, which is the patient hunter ambush tactic, with Ovesa and 4 of his Earthcast. Him and his 8 stay behind as the rest of the planet is evacuated, and they stay in this secluded science research base place where the Earthcast scientists work tirelessly to find a way to destroy this entire High Fleet. And after 12 days, I think it said, something like that, the Tyranids find them and they start their assault on this little science base. So they have like an hour left before they're all going to die, so they have to, go fast. The guy in the Riptide dies. I don't know who he was. I think he's just some random guy who Farsight liked at the time, but he's dead. So Ovesa jumps in the Riptide and starts kicking butt as the 4 Earthcast scientists finally finish their project, and the 8 would evacuate the planet on a big manta.
They evacuate.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
boo.
Good one, buddy.
Boo.
Boo.
To mention, Farsight 1v1's a Hive Tyrant, and Bravestorm kills a Bio Titan. So that's cool. So they leave. The Earthcast scientists sacrifice themselves and are eaten and torn to bits, very dead. But their sacrifice was not in vain, because the Earthcast scientists placed a time-released necrotic poison inside themselves, and when it went to the, DNA gene pools or whatever of the Tyranids, I don't remember what they're called, it spread to the High Fleet ships, and they could see in space this black goop eating the Tyranids alive, and they basically 1v1 did entire High Fleet with just 4 dudes and 8 guys in battle suits. It's a bunch of goofballs. They sure did it, though.
In a spicy pond as well, with a little...
Yeah.
It's like the idea that the Tyrannid would just, I've got a bit of an upset stomach. Oh, and you go into the Tyrannid doctors and it's like, what's going on? And just vomiting weird, oozy stuff that kills them. Like, oh, what have you been eating? The Tau. Oh, figures, yeah.
It's coming out from both ends. The Tau. Oh my god. So sorry, boys.
I've got the weeb sickness.
Oh.
So it's pretty high. Farsight's back. He's deeply moved by the sacrifice of the Earthcast, and his flame is reignited. His leadership is reignited, and he rebuilds Viorlas and kind of rules for a while with his buddies. Retaking planets, fixing up everything, building monuments on the Earthcast planet for all the guys who sacrificed themselves. So it's a pretty good time. After this, the timeline is just Farsight fights a bunch. He goes back to the Tau Empire, I think 2 or 3 times to help them fight. I believe he goes back to help them fight against the Tyranids, and he also obviously goes back to help them fight in the third or second Damocles Crusade, conducted by the White Scars and the Raven Guard, and I believe the Ultramarines are also there. As I told these guys, they're lucky because I didn't get to read the whole book, sadly. I only got to read the first one, which doesn't have Farsight in it. So this episode will only be 2.5 hours instead of 3.5 hours.
More
sorry,
Farsight.
viewers.
White Scars are cool. Of course, Sarah Khan is a beast. Shadow Sun. Ooh.
It's the first book is pretty good though. It kind of looks into Shadow Sun's view of Farsight as he's a traitor, and gives a little bit of Envoy and stuff. Shadow Sun and Khosrow Khan, I think that's how you say his name, are play kind of cat and mouse, but it's more like cat and cat, where they're just trying to kill each other. The Khan actually does basically kill Shadow Sun. He like stabs her, he slashes her in the chest and pierces her heart, and she goes unconscious. And he glacks her buddy in the stealth suit. So that was, so give him some credit. He's a cool guy.
Khan, baby.
Yeah. They do have a lot of bite charges against gun lines, which, I mean, to their credit, it sometimes kind of works, but at the same time, like, what
You gotta get your adrenaline rush somehow, you know. After a while, you know, circus rides don't do it anymore.
The Kachan are also there, which is cool. And yeah, like I said, I unfortunately don't know the whole story. Sad times. But Farsight does show up as the Imperials are kind of wrecking the Tau Empire, as they do, because Imperium is better. Not gonna lie. They're more powerful, though, that's for sure.
They have more industry, is what they have.
Yeah, they have more industry points, and the Tau have more science points. But when your enemy has...
Bigger pecs, bigger abs.
They used to have more. They used to have more science points.
Yeah.
Now light bulbs are the fucking mystery.
Yeah.
Why
But when
your
your
use science when
opponent
you can just
has-
headbutt your opponents to death? You know, it's easy.
When your opponent has a galaxy-spanning empire, and the Tau only have, like, I don't know, a few solar systems, you know, it's not exactly an even fight.
Like the United States of America going against Sealand. Like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah. But yeah, Farsight does show up, and he helps them, and he literally rescues them and saves them. And in this battle, I believe he fights with an Eversor assassin, which explodes and almost kills him. I believe he fights with two, actually. And Darkstrider kills a Vindicare assassin, and Shadow Sun fights against a Calidus and a Calexis. I'm trying to remember all the assassin names.
Christ.
There's new ones now, too.
Aren't they the ones which, like, don't the Eldar describe one of those assassins as, like, the most heinous thing that's ever existed?
They're probably
the
the Eversor.
Yeah,
If for
those,
people who don't
those
know,
things are pretty messed up.
like for like newbies to Warhammer, these assassins are literally like the most heinous, like purged of. There's nothing good about them. They're just the worst thing humans can create, and the Tau are like,
People are like,
yikes.
I'm around the Sisters of Silence. They make me feel a bit iffy. And then there's these guys, and they're like, I want to pull off my face. They're not nice to be around.
Yeah, so the assassins are pretty cool. And Envoy dies in this conflict. I don't think Farsight actually knows that he dies, though. Both, like, I think only pretty much Shadow Sun knows that that Envoy dies. The Tau race doesn't really know that Envoy dies because it's a big deal, so they kind of just keep him as a hologram to pretend that he's okay, to not, create cataclysmic consequences for the Empire because their glorious leader has perished. But Shadow Sun is sent out to hunt Farsight as well. She's woken up at first, I think, to hunt him, and then she conducts the fights on Grelin Prime and all that. And she does find Farsight, and she lets him know that she's going to hunt him wherever he goes, but she does let him escape and live. Thanks, Shadow Sun. She also, at the beginning of the expansion, destroys a statue of Farsight, which Farsight saw in a vision a long time ago when he touches the warp drive on the Scarlord ship. So that was a cool little tie-in. So after that, Farsight goes back to the Farsight Enclaves, and the War of Dakka continues, because the Orcs don't just leave like that. They're back, and they're having a good time. The Alpha Legion's also monitoring all of this, because why wouldn't they? They're the Alpha Legion, and they're
Just
there.
observing, going, this is fun. Look at this.
Yeah.
Hey.
We are in Arks of Omen lore now, so the new stuff, which is pretty exciting. Let's see. Farsight, basically, he's just fighting orcs for a while. He sees a vision come out of a orc weird boy, which is odd, and it's just more like corn stuff, basically. But Nazdrag is the big mech war boss, who's the big bad guy now. And Nazdrag is making these things called Telefragas, which from what I can understand, is like a portal gun kind of, but like on an artillery scale. So you shoot something and then it teleports it into the warp. And he's like mass producing these to just blow up planets and teleport chunks
Yo.
of planets into the warp, which is kind of fun.
That is cool. Is that like? Is there like a reference that there's like a potato battery somewhere here as well? If it was done Portal.
Like, for real.
Oh man.
But yeah, the war is still going on. Farsight enclaves obviously don't have a lot of resources and a lot of reinforcements other than the odd defectors that they get, and then the generations of Tau that go by, because Tau don't live for that long, like I said before. Farsight learns of these Telefregas and launches a Mont'ka on the planet which Nazdreg is on. He battles with the orcs for a time and tries to lure Nazdreg out, which actually works, but he has this crazy technology and he turns it on and he makes this big giant portal and he drives his truck, his like war truck, through this portal, and it lands in the middle of the workshop that Farsight and the Eight are invading and trying to destroy the Telefregas. They have a big battle, and if I remember correctly, Nazdreg is killed by Farsight, and all the Eight are wounded pretty badly, but it works out. Unfortunately, before they can retake the planet and destroy all the bad things, they've discovered a fleet of Chaos Space Marines in orbit. And they have the Ark of Omen, or a Ark of Omen. I'm actually, lore crime confession, I barely know what the Arks of Omen are. I know that they're big ships, but that's about it. I haven't
Yeah,
looked
I
very
think
much into it.
Vashtor made them and was like, "Hey, Abaddon, cool ships, huh?" He's like, "Yeah," and then Abaddon's like, "Here, lieutenants have these big ships to do stuff."
Like Pimp My Ride, but Abaddon's. Yo, dog, I hear you wanted an Ark of Omen. I got you an Ark and an Omen.
Jeez.
You get an Ark of Omen, and you get an Ark of Omen.
Yeah. They're the Alpha Legion though are posing as Death Watch. They're on a Death Watch ship. They've infiltrated it pretty well. They're working for this guy called Lord Glass, and they're shadowing Farsight. They want him to go to Arthas Moloch. I think they just want him to conduct to get everyone to fight there, so that the Alpha Legion can go in and steal this key for the Ark of Omen, which also, they're working for Vashtor, but also this Demon Prince guy, Ugalax, who has the Ark of Omen, is working for Vashtor, I thought. So I don't really know why Vashtor wants the Alpha Legion guys to get the key and not Ugalax to get the key. I don't ask questions, I guess. It's the Alpha Legion. Ooh, I'm nefarious. Yeah, Farsight regrettably leaves because he can't fight all the orcs and the chaos. They're already low on manpower. Things aren't going so well. He decides that he's going to launch a Kauyon on both the forces, and they're the bait. They're going to go to Arthas Moloch and try to lure them in to fight each other. And they're going to set their base of operations up on the Star Dais as a last resort option to summon all the Khorne demons and just kill everyone, basically. He actually sends a message to the Tau Empire, which was really cool. He sends it straight to the ethereals, and he offers a surrender of himself if they will come and help their people, and he begs them, and he hopes that they haven't completely abandoned the Tau people, even though Farsight has kind of abandoned them. So, he offers contrition, says that he'll sacrifice himself and offer himself up for surrender if they send aid. And he hopes that works. It takes a long time for Tau things to go through space, so he doesn't get to know till a bit later. So they head to Arthas Moloch and they set up shop, and things really don't go very well. It's like a cataclysmic war. There's titans and knights and orc gargants and air fleets, and it's crazy. Tau are fighting where they can and surviving when they can, and people are starting to get a little sus, a little more bloodthirsty than Tau are supposed to, which is kind of sketchy. Albatai and Bravestorm both take critical damage and are out of the fight. Albatai is an AI, so it doesn't really matter that much. But Bravestorm has to be taken out of his Iridium battlesuit in his life support system and placed in stasis until they can get him a new one. And the 7th generation of Brightsword is killed as he sacrifices himself. So they have to make a new clone later on, but that hasn't happened yet. Farsight gets a message back from the ethereals, and they say no. Unsurprisingly, because they're kind of jerks. And Farsight is not happy, to say the least. He gets flashes of anger and, murder and, killing the ethereals, and this makes him feel good. Throughout the time on Arthas Moloch, the Tau are seemingly being corrupted by Khorne, which is neat. Throughout the whole Arks of Omen book, there's really wacky, pictures of Tau with weird mechanical bits coming out of them, and they're screaming and they're looking all chaosy. It's cool. I don't know. Farsight also has a new battle suit at this point, which is called a Supernova battle suit. It still has his Cold Star AI in it. She just has a new name now. I don't really know what it does, but he has the amulet of Arthas Moloch, the hexagrammaton thing, in his battle suit, which is neat. Still using the sword because the sword is cool and he likes it. Why would you get rid of it? So now after getting this news of the ethereals, he's very angry and he does a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll read this little paragraph from the book because he does, I don't know, it kind of shows off how good of a warrior he actually is. Well, let's see. On a more personal level, Oshova's anger saw him lead the most dangerous offensive. Never one to command from the rear lines, still Farsight's sheer aggression bred disquiet amongst those who had known him longest, even as it inspired his line warriors to greater heights of aggression. It was Farsight who met Sledrak, the swordsman, blade to blade amidst the burning wrecks of the Ghoul Tor offensive, and lopped off the Slaneshi champion's head. It was Farsight, too, who cut his way onto the command bridge of Captain Frega Stompa, Dakka, and drenched the war engine's controls in the war boss's blood, fighting his way to the heart of the traitors Vostok 816th and hacking down their commanding tyrant, felling Baroness, Niktar's knightly steed, Infernal Tormentor, then claiming Niktar's head, serving as a lure to draw war boss Dakka into a murderous Tau crossfire. Farsight was ever at the forefront of the fighting, and the crimson hue of his battlesuits did little to hide the blood that spattered it from sensor head to toe.
Damn.
Yeah. So he's booling pretty hard.
Was this all in like an 80s montage where like the
Yeah, it
music
seems
was
like it.
blaring? Jesus Christ. Brutal.
Yeah, so Farsight's ramping it up a bit, and he's starting to get a little too fond of fighting, I think, and a little too bloodthirsty. Let's see. The Tau actually finds the key, though, for the Ark of Omen. The Alpha Legion guys have the coordinates already. Glahax doesn't know where it is, so he's just looking. He brought. I think he's part of the Black Legion. I'm not. Well, maybe not. He's just a guy, I think. But he has World Leaders and Thousand Sons and Word Bearers with him. So this is like a very sizable force of Chaos Space Marines and a very sizable force of Orcs. So it is like a classic apocalypse war with all the crazy stuff going on. The Tau find it, though. They don't know what it is, so they just leave it there because, they're busy fighting this desperate war. So the stealth teams just like leave and, I don't know, kind of quarantine it off, say don't touch that because it's all crystally and gross looking. But the Alpha Legion guys hear this up in space. They kill the Loyalist Deathwatch guys that they're with and go down to the planet and take the key and leave. And that's it for their story. Farsight starts to realize that this is their last chance to survive the war. So he orders a retreat to the Star Dais where they're all going to get picked up by the air caste and ferried off as their carry-on is done and they're getting the two forces to fight each other. The retreat goes kind of badly, though, because the Tau are en masse seemingly being corrupted by chaos, at least a little bit, because it describes how the Tau are unusually bloodthirsty, and unlike them, they're letting the foe get very close, and some even break ranks and like charge into battle against World Eaters, Khorne Berserkers, which is insane. They obviously lose immediately, but you wouldn't expect that from a Tau.
Start saying hooves for the Hoove God. And what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Oh,
silly boy?
Lord.
What are you doing?
It's like a teddy bear charging like a fully grown adult, and it's just look at that spiral and just kicks it as far as you can.
Hey man, they gave their all. They tried.
They did in fact try.
They probably shouldn't have tried, but they tried.
Yeah. The Tau are... It is pretty sus, though. Arthas Moloch clearly has an effect on the Tau, and the Warp clearly can touch Tau, even if they don't really know... They don't know what it is yet. They still think it's mind science. They still use the words mind science, so... Farsight still doesn't completely understand Chaos, even though he knows it exists. But yeah. I
have a quick question. Do you think that's because the Farsight enclaves are not necessarily oppressed by the ethereals, that they're a bit more like, obviously you had to feel more emotion to be connected to the warp, so do you think maybe the Farsight enclaves, the Tau who live in that, are a bit more emotional, so maybe there's a bit more of a pull there, maybe, Eli?
Yeah, I can see that. They're not under the influence of the Tau Va, which is seemingly its own warp entity.
I like the idea that the freer they get, the more susceptible they are to corruption from chaos. Like, we're not being controlled by the ethereals.
That makes
Oh,
sense.
what's this? Chaos.
That's the whole idea behind Imperial zealotry. Like they pray to the Emperor so that
no.
so that they can't hear whatever
Good
else is going to whisper back at them.
You don't get to vary back and forth between the Emperor's a god, but also no, it's not this. No, it doesn't work like that. You gotta pick one. It's one or the other.
Yeah, in the Gene Stealer cults, I'm pretty sure the guy said that they pray to the Emperor so they don't hear the voices of everything else that talks to them.
Ooh.
Yeah, see?
So it's pretty important to be a zealot in the Imperium. Otherwise, if they weren't all zealots, the entire system would crumble and they'd turn to chaos and
Also,
fight for the
Inquisitor
Tau.
kills you.
But there's your answer to the random to all the people who wonder why the Imperium is so zealous. It's actually quite necessary. We go now to the final battle on the Star Dais, which the Tau have been leading their enemies to, and Farsight waits till the last second and lets the World Eaters and Orcs close in on the dais. As they shed blood, demons appear once again and start causing carnage. Farsight has like a literal demon prince moment though, and let's see, we can read that because it's cool. Sure, we'll read like a couple paragraphs here. What use would such a puissant destroyer have for orderly strategies or cowardly retreat? He asked himself. Farsight was suddenly disgusted by his own plan to flee, to leave the battle and glory to others. Why did he always have to be the one to make such sacrifices? Why were those he led, and those who had once led him, all such weak creatures that weight fell ever upon his shoulders? The resentment rose in Farsight's like bile. Requests for orders and cries for aid crackled, tinny and feeble, through the cadrenet, and he desired nothing more than to tear his way out of his command cocoon to escape them. He leapt and fought, hacked and cut, yet even as Begel and Goyla and Molochites all fell beneath his blade, still Farsight's rage grew. There would be no retreat. What right did his followers have to expect salvation from him? He saw many of them, through the swirling smoke and the thunder of blossoming explosions, laying down hails of fire or charging madly into their own fights. He was glad. Let the strong survive, Farsight thought. Perhaps they would be worthy to fight on in his shadow. He meanwhile would finally fight only for himself. He would fight alone, the way of the Monat, the army of one. It was that thought that cut through the blood madness clouding Farsight's mind. Old Commander Puretide had three great pupils, Oshazera, the cunning huntress, Oshova, the swift keen blade, Case, the loner, the one who stood and fought apart from even his own Talarissa bondmates. Farsight had never understood Case's methods, and had always pitied the lone Tau on some level, for he would never understand the bonds of loyalty or duty that gave battle its purpose. And then Farsight felt all better.
Yay.
He drank the carnate Kool-Aid.
It's cool that he just was like, no, I'm ignoring the corn thoughts in my head. I'm ignoring the corruption. It can go away now.
Yeah. Before this though, he has a vision where the Dawnblade is replaced by a colossal axe more befitting his station as a bloody-handed lord of war. Skulls rattled on chains against his gore-caked armor, amongst them those of every ethereal who had ever lied to him or his people.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool, to be fair.
I wonder where that vision came from.
So, yeah, we see Farsight very, very touched by Khorne in this book, in the Arks of Omen, which is pretty cool. And it's cool to see that he resisted. Otherwise, he would just get turned into a demon prince, chaos lord, and he would be less of the good guy that he is, which would kind of suck. I don't know, as cool as chaos is, in the end, they're still just slaves to the dark gods, you gotta admit.
Not Farsight, though.
That's right. They do escape Arthas Moloch, though, thankfully. And he orders his 5 at this point, because 3 are wounded or dead. And he tells them that they're not allowed to fight anymore, because they're also losing it to the bloodlust. And they ferry off all the fire warriors and fire cast that they can and get off the planet. And then, I believe the orcs release a big warp blast on the Star Dais and destroy it. And later, they come back after a long time, because they actually see the Chaos Space Marines leaving the system, as I guess they discover that the key isn't there anymore. So they leave, the Tau aren't pursued, and the orcs follow the Chaos Space Marines to battle them. So they get out pretty unscathed in the end, other than like the bajillion casualties they take on the planet. But
it's like the idea of the orcs just being like, "Where are you going? Come back! We're not finished fighting yet. Come on."
Yeah. So things work out in the end. It wasn't like it's a very pyrrhic victory for Farsight, but him and the Enclaves do survive to fight another day, and they think they're kind of always struggling and clinging to life for what they can. I don't know. I guess Anshi needs to send them some more help. That'd be nice. But they do go back to Arthas Moloch again after everything is destroyed. And I think Farsight just wants clarity because Ovesa asks him, like, why don't we just send the Earthcast and we can, take our life signs and investigate these anomalous life signs and energy spectra and whatever. But Farsight doesn't want to. I think he wants closure. And he feels that something about the planet has changed. He goes back and he finds the star Deus destroyed, and a weight is lifted off of his shoulders because there's no more demonic corruption on the planet, it seems. In the time, though, time does seem to move faster, or decay moves faster on the planet, and they find the war gear to be rusted and all the bodies to be like completely decomposed. But in the end, in an orc skull, he finds a little green sprout of plant, and he starts to find them in more places around the planet. And so there is still hope for Arthas Moloch and the Farsight Enclaves. And that's all. The end.
Ooh, damn. He's been through a lot. I think his story's like quite... It's weird to say it about like a Xenos, but he feels very... Like a lot of the characters in Warhammer are pretty like... And then he just like giga chatted up and then he just won the day. Whereas Farsight feels like he just struggles with it. Like he's always... He doesn't always... It's nice that he doesn't always win. And he's always actually human. It's really bizarre to compliment him that way, but he feels very human. Like an actual battle rather than a one-sided
He's an actual
slap.
character, not an archetype of his faction.
Yeah.
Like he's not, it's not, this is a white scar. He is this, this, and this. Does he have other character traits? No, they're all the same person, just with different names.
How dare you make a jab at my beloved white scars? How dare you?
Name one character that isn't fast in the white scars. Oh wait.
Moving on.
That was really good though. Thank you. Like that was I think definitely because I'm having to tackle Farsight myself in the future, and I'm hype because his story is pretty good, isn't it? Though I think compared to like a lot of the characters we talk about here, they're like, oh, it's like a lot of characters are neat, but Farsight is probably like now top 10 for me. I'd say.
I do have a question though about Tau Tau and the relation of Farsight, like because you covered obviously a lot of lore about Farsight. How if you were to approximate a percentage of all the lore there is for the Tau, how much of it is just Farsight?
Probably like literally half their lore.
Yeah,
I might not be completely right, but at least like 33%, I'd say.
a very noticeable chunk.
Yeah.
Well, he's like he's the contrast. He is the depth though within that faction.
Yeah.
For people.
He's the only other side of the coin, because the Tau side of the coin has like all their bunch of different characters, so they can't focus on them as much. I guess, right? So yeah, well, Tau have been getting a lot more love in the lore lately. I feel like though they've gotten a lot of books and stuff.
Well, we appreciate or hopefully people who like Farsight or like Tau have been appreciating the massive lore dump that we have just given them in their laps, because that was,
Quite hefty.
Hefty. I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. And if you want to leave this and you'll know exactly everything about Farsight, I think, which is, to be fair, expert section. We did it. Eli did it. So drop a comment below for people who enjoyed that. Next time, guys, I think we're doing a little bit special something next time, aren't we, Colin? Would you care to discuss the next topic?
I think I will. It's just I have a confession and an apology. As what's coming next. The confession is that while Warhammer Fantasy is probably my favorite fantasy setting, 40K is not my favorite science fiction setting. And the apology is, if you're hoping for anything resembling unbiased debate, you're going to be disappointed, because we're going out on a new journey with our first Versus episode. You'll get more information about that when it comes out. And what we will be doing is the Spartan 2s versus the Space Marines.
Woo!
And nothing but bias here. I'm not even going to pretend like I'm going to hide that fact.
It's going to be an argument. An argument between friends.
At least one.
Oh, it's heating up, boys. It's heating up.
Just remember, everyone. Space Marines die in droves, but Spartans never die. They just go missing in action.
Reach.
Propaganda.
Right.
Propaganda. I've seen Noble Six's great
right.
fight.
Oh, no, that's only for Spartan 2s. Spartan 3s are fucking disposable.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
All right, George. George died on the ship. He blew up. He was a Spartan too.
And then George teleported away.
And he's all better now.
Even if he had a magnificent moustache, it doesn't count.
No, you know, technically he did technically teleport away. It was a slip space bomb. He just teleported to hell.
Yikes.
Jeez.
Well, all this and more.
We'll save this.
We'll save this
I
for
gotta save
our next video. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed it. And if you want to see particularly more, obviously, Xenos don't really get the most amount of love sometimes in Warhammer. But if you want to see more Xenos factions or more characters in that area, please let us know in the comments below.
I beg of you, please, more Zetos.
Eldar
It's not the
Sim.
Eldar.
I think Farsight probably has the most love out of all Xenos in the game,
Probably.
to be fair.
And we want to celebrate that because he deserves it 100%.
Shout out to the Yanari for getting no love, negative
Oh,
love,
pain,
That's right.
pain.
and the
He's
Avatar
worship
of
slash
Cain.
anyways.
All right.
Go, before we fight.
Avatar of Cain, more like Avatar of Cuck. Hey.
Avatar of Lame was right there, and you went with talk. If this is what the Versus episode is going to be like, I'm winning handily.
Okay. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we'll catch you all next time.
Bye, I love you.
Peace.
Take care, everyone.
Oh dear.